Good evening, everyone. We're about to start. If you could please take your seats, we'd appreciate it. And if you could silence or turn off your cell phones, it would be greatly appreciated. City Attorney? Mr. Manager? Good? Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome here to South Miami City Hall. Today is Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. The time is approximately 7 p.m. At this time, we'd like to call to order the City Commission meeting for the City of South Miami. Again, if you could please silence your cell phones, we would greatly appreciate it. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Mayor Fernandez,
Present.
Vice Mayor Bonish,
Here.
Commissioner Corey,
Present.
Commissioner Kaye,
Here.
Commissioner Lehman,
Present.
you have a quorum.
Thank you. If we could please stand for a brief prayer and moment of silence. And as we begin tonight's reflections, I'd just like to express our condolences for the family of Paul Hunt. Paul was a dear neighbor and friend, a beloved leader in our community. He passed away this past Friday. I had the privilege of getting to know Paul, 22 years ago in my prior work with the City of Miami, where Paul was at the time an active member of the Coral Gables Congregational Church and was leading an effort to create a micro-lending program here in Miami-Dade County, one of his many civic and charitable endeavors. Many of you may know him from his work here at the city, through the National Association of Social Work, and also his prior leadership of the Alliance on Aging here in Miami-Dade County. We will miss Paul, and our heartfelt condolences go out to his family. And in his memory, we'll pray a quick Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Thank you. Commissioner Kaye, if you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
Just have one thing I need to tell you guys.
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say, in the event that I get up momentarily, my daughter is homesick alone. And as they like to say, nobody puts that baby in a corner. So if she calls, I'm going to have to get up and go and take that.
Excellent. Thank you. You will be excused.
Thanks.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we have a couple presentations this evening.
Yes,
Who's first, please?
Winston Harris from RS&H for traffic calming measures.
Mr. Harris, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you. Right, I'm Winston Harris. I'm with RS&H. Back in November of last year, FDOT District 6 contracted RS&H to help them with what we call a road safety audit. Not necessarily a traffic calming study, although traffic calming measures do come out of these studies. It's a road safety audit along US 1. So I'm here to present some preliminary findings from our work that we have been doing and get your feedback as to things that, your opinion is. So there we are. You can see the limits of the project. We're along US 1 from Southwest 88th Street up to 57th Avenue. Okay, a road safety audit. So what is a road safety audit? We're really taking a qualitative look at existing conditions along the roadway. We're looking for safety concerns, and we're making suggestions to address those safety concerns. So importantly, at this stage, we're not doing data collection, we're not doing design. The department will look at those suggestions, they will follow up, and they will make a determination of what suggestions they can move forward with. We had a team working with us. The team consists of several, traffic engineers, some are with me here today, roadway engineers, and importantly, working with the city. So we've been working with your city staff in terms of getting information on them on what are some of the issues along this corridor. And some of the primary issues we had coming out was really pedestrian safety. So a lot of focus on the road safety audit was paid to pedestrian safety along the corridor. Please feel free to ask questions as you go along. There you see the FDOT's compass, of course, which I should mention. This road safety audit is certainly keeping with FDOT's collaborative safety being their #1 criteria, trying to drive down fatalities and serious injuries to zero, and of course, coordinating with the communities. Okay, the next couple of slides will look at some of those areas where there were safety concerns identified and some of the suggestions for addressing some of those safety concerns. First and foremost is that section of US 1 between Southwest 72nd Street and Southwest 70th. This is that area where some time ago the city had looked at the possibility of providing an overhead facility, crossing facility for pedestrians. The city made a determination that that overhead facility would not be in the best interest, meet what you're looking for. So we're asked to look at some kind of at-grade solution, which should be a lot more cheaper, probably used a lot more by pedestrians. Given the volumes and given the pedestrian activity in this area, of course, what we determined would probably be, a reasonable solution would be to provide some kind of signalized pedestrian crossing. So this would be similar to something like what you have currently at US 1 and 24th Street, which probably a lot of you have seen that kind of a crossing. So it would be a pedestrian push button type actuation signal. Because of the proximity of those intersections, signalized intersections to the north and to the south, we'd have to make sure that it is coordinated so that we maintain progression along US 1. And then we'd also have, try to look at the possibility of trying to implement what we call leading pedestrian intervals at those adjacent signals, where there have been a lot of pedestrian crashes. I mean, we reported about 7 within that section over the past 5 years.
Sorry, just within this section?
Yeah, within the
Okay.
section. Yeah, we pulled crashes between 2018 and 2020, up to 2023.
But this section that's on the graphic right now?
This section on the graphic,
Okay.
well, going up to 57th Avenue, I should say.
Got it.
There were 7 reported crashes involving pedestrians along that section. So certainly a high pedestrian activity here and a lot of conflicts involving peds and vehicles. So,
Mr. Harris, before you move on, can I
Yeah.
just ask a question about this slide?
sure.
Anyone else have any questions, colleagues?
Go ahead and I'll ask.
So the crossing you're suggesting that is of the same style as the one on 24th Avenue further up the corridor,
Correct.
would that be at somewhere in the, some of a mid-block condition between
Like a
70th and 72nd? What
Correct.
would you envision?
Correct. If you look at the graphic and you see where that yellow pedestrian
Okay.
warning is, that's roughly the area that we're looking at, which would be just south of 71st. Going north 71st, as you go north of 71st, it opens up and you get another left turn lane. So if you put it just south of there, you'd have a narrow section for pedestrians to cross. You could reduce the total crossing time, and you'd also have the median to provide a 2-stage crossing. So a lot of options installing it just south of 71st Street. As I said, moving forward, DOT, of course, would have to go collect some traffic count data, some design, look at possibilities. There may be other obstacles in that vicinity, drainage and stuff, drainage structures, which, at this level, we're not looking to that detail. So, but within that vicinity, we think would be
An appropriate place.
location,
Okay.
yeah.
Commissioner Kaya?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So have you looked into the flow of people coming off the metro station, more so on 72nd Street? And then I also see a lot of flow going northbound on US 1, but they cross all the way at 71st Street. The interactions coming from the metro station on that particular area, you have to make a big loop to come back around. So one thing that we should look into. Second, you guys are doing to my understanding, you guys are doing the traffic study based on what you're seeing in the past 3 years. What can you talk a little bit more about future usage based on what we see as the usage model and the amount of density that we're going to see, particularly in that particular area, within the next 5 to 10 years? Is that something that we can address as well?
Okay, so yeah, so let me clarify. So the RSA is really looking at, we're going out there today and we're seeing what's happening out there today. Of course, speaking with the city staff, we got a lot of information about planned developments, both to the east and to the west of USS 1. So whatever we see out there today in terms of pedestrian activities, certainly the anticipation is that is going to increase over time, which is going to make it even more warranted for having some kind of crossing in there. So yes, that information is there. As the project moves forward, that data in terms of pedestrian generation, as well as collecting existing traffic, will all be taken to the account and saying, yeah, we can justify a signal here, a pedestrian crossing here, and here's the appropriate location. But yes, future conditions are taken into consideration.
Can you, for us, and for me, that I don't, sorry, Mayor,
How many more questions do you think you'll need? I just want to keep us moving.
sorry, I have a few.
Okay, let's,
I mean, this is important.
yeah, it is. Let's, just rather than interrupt this president, let's save it to the end.
Sure,
That's okay, and we'll pick them up that way. So continue, sir.
sorry.
Yeah,
That's okay.
we have quite a few slides, but the first couple of ones really talk about the main points, and then I kind of can flow through the other ones. But this was probably one of the most important locations, because this was the initial driving force for the road safety audit. The next slide is just a graphical illustration of what it would probably look like. Overhead signals, backplates, highlights, reflectors to kind of so that the signals are as visible as possible. And of course, push button activated. Looking at the rest of the corridor, we did notice within that section between 88th Street and 62nd Avenue, it's a half-mile section where there is no pedestrian crossing. There's no ability, there's no facility to cross the roadway within that half-mile section. So of course, anyone that's crossing within that section there's could be an issue. So we are suggesting looking at possibility of another crossing similar to the one we previously just discussed within that section. You see right where that highlighted pit crossing is, it's just about at 63rd Avenue, which happens to be, you will see in the next slide, a location where we're suggesting for some improvements also. So similar to the previous one, trying to put some crossing facility to cover that wide gap, half-mile gap, where there's just no facility for a pedestrian to get across the roadway. Right. And as I mentioned, 63rd Avenue is the next area that we looked at of concern. This is a T intersection, multiple conflicting movements, left turns coming out of 63rd, left turns from US 1 entering and exiting. A lot of congestion, a lot of conflicts at this location. Certainly we feel like it could benefit from some kind of a control for traffic trying to enter and exit at 63rd Avenue. A couple suggestions we're looking at either what's called restricting some of the movements to provide what we call a directional median opening. Typically at these locations, the most conflicting movements is those left turns getting out, because they cross two movements, and that's the most difficult median. When you're out there, you can see it. So that would be one option. A second option would be trying to signalize it. If you signalize it, you could cover two things at once. Provide the protection for drivers coming in and out, as well as trying to provide some pedestrian crossing facility within that location. In fact, it was 63rd Avenue was the second location I should have mentioned where there was a fatal crash involving a pedestrian. So certainly pedestrian activity is a concern here also. All right. The next location is at 61st, which is very similar to 63rd. Same type of T intersection, multiple movements, conflicting movements. What can we do to kind of address it? Could we signalize it, or could we do a directional median opening? Those are two options, again, that DOT would look at for addressing the conflicts at this location. So very similar condition to 63rd. Again, illustrating a directional median open that would restrict left turns coming out of 61st or a signal at this location. Okay. Traffic congestion. Traffic congestion is throughout the entire corridor and all the intersections. It's a systemic problem. along US 1, as you know. The suggestions that we were putting forward to try to address some of these are the more low-cost type of suggestions. TSMOS type stuff, which is signal timing, adjusting signal phasing, adjusting signal operations to try to get the most out of your signals. We could put in a more advanced traffic management system to help coordinate the signals, automated. That's possible also. We are aware that there are some locations where there are some particular concerns, not referenced in detail here, but we know at 62nd Avenue in particular, there was a concern brought to us just recently regarding, we understand it's left turn movements making northbound and some, let's call it 62nd Avenue, north and south left turns. Currently, they don't make those turns just on a permissive. That means they are not protected at any point in time during the signal phasing for making that movements. So one of the things we could look at is try to provide a protected left turn phase for those movements, as is on some of the other intersections here. Or you could try to, what we call split phase, so that the northbounds go, the southbounds go. Either way, provide some protection. This would require, of course, DOT, I mean, if this moves forward, gathering additional data, doing what they call a left turn warrant analysis to determine, yes, this solution would work. But certainly that's something that will be looked at and will be referenced in our report. Okay. The next couple of slides, discuss a lot of maintenance, low-cost type stuff that needs to be addressed. Throughout the entire corridor, we saw a lot of ADA issues at sidewalks. We're not going to go through all of them here, just touch on some of them. Cross slopes, many locations where the cross slopes exceed the minimum 2% would need to be addressed. Multiple locations, we saw that. The ADA requirements at the entrances, this one is within the median, is missing in many locations. This one is a median, but a lot are missing at the edges of the street as you get onto the sidewalk. Let's see. Can we move? I think I am. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So this next one again, the detectable warning devices again missing at some locations. Just touching on a couple. These are cheap, relatively low expensive countermeasures that the DOT can address fairly quickly, or others. Clear width, the 4-foot requirement for wheelchairs. Again, we found that at several locations, some more difficult to address than others. This is one where it's next to a mast arm. Can be addressed by adding some sidewalk adjacent to it. Others are a little more difficult to address. This one's a huge pole in the sidewalk. You would have to probably try to increase the turn radius here to get the full 4-foot clearance, if we can. Tripping hazards, again, this is throughout the entire corridor, multiple locations where there's more than a quarter-inch gap in the surface, which is when there's more than a quarter-inch gap, then we say that's probably a tripping hazard that can cause some injuries. So that's a maintenance issue again, which is throughout the corridor, many locations. Here are other examples of tripping hazards we found throughout the corridor. These are not difficult to address. We saw some locations where we had PED signals that were missing. The DOT has a RRR project, which is addressing some of these right now as we speak. Again, signal heads, we did find some locations where we did some nighttime reviews. Signal heads were not operating during the nighttime. Again, can easily be resolved, maintenance. Drop-off hazards, we saw some locations where the sloping was exceeding the 1-to-2 ratio, which can be hazardous. This, again, will take a little bit more to address, but an issue that, you know, we can also suggest some improvements to address that. Another drop-off location. Sign-in, multiple locations, again, throughout the entire corridor where there's either defaced signs or missing signs. And some of those missing signs can lead to wrong-way movements, especially exiting from those multiple driveways along the corridor. Again, another maintenance issue which we can address in quickly. Signalization. Typically, we like to see backplates on the back of our signals, especially those facing the east-west direction, to improve their visibility. Some of those are missing in some of the locations. We have identified them up there that to be addressed. Street lighting, some of the street light facilities are out. We have identified them. That, again, can be quickly addressed. Pavement markings, a lot of faded markings in areas. A lot of these should be addressed by the FDOT's ongoing program, Triple R project. Bushing, this needs constant maintenance, but there are locations along the corridor where you come out of those driveways, overgrown vegetation certainly causes a problem. And then there are a couple bus stop facilities. This one here in particular is missing some of the facilities that you'd like to see out there. You know, benches and shelters, not shown, not missing. There are places along the corridor where, I guess, based on parking, difficulty finding parking, folks park across the sidewalk. Harder to address, may need enforcement to address this one. So that's it, quickly going through.
Mr. Harris, thank you for the presentation.
Right.
Colleagues, any questions on any of the slides? Let me recognize Commissioner Corey, and then we'll give you another bite of the apple. Commissioner Corey, go ahead.
Thank you so much, and this is extremely welcome, being the development that we have coming to the city, and the fact that we're uniquely sort of bifurcated by a highway, our city, and our downtown abuts the highway, so it's very important. I was just curious, as you're doing this and maybe updating some landscaping in the medians as well, is there a standard for that, and is there a way for us to either request or contribute more trees, as we know that can be a way to mitigate traffic, as well as heat index, as well as, make this highway look a little nicer going straight through our city?
Yeah, yes, certainly FDOT has guidelines for vegetation within the median. Certainly, as we get close to the intersections, we want less vegetation, we want to control the height, but away from the intersections, as long as it's not restricting visibility, then you can have larger canopies. And typically, I would say almost all DOT projects have some landscaping component on it. So certainly, if these projects as they move forward, landscaping certainly can be incorporated.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Kaye, you're recognized.
Thank you.
Hey,
By the way,
Commissioner-
this is very welcome, and I'm glad you guys
Sure.
got to do this. Is this something that you guys do? How often do we do these type of studies? Is it simply on request? Is it something that happens every 5, 10, 20 years? How does that work?
No. The DOT has recognized for many years now that road safety audits are one of what FHW's case calls, proven safety measures. And more, DOT is doing these projects. DOT has several firms assisted them with such projects. We have done probably 3 or 4 in the last 4 or 5 months, 6 months working on. We have another one working on right now too, up in on the beach, Miami Beach area. So it's an ongoing program. It's something that DOT is certainly pushing as a proactive measure to try to drive down fatalities and serious injuries. Part of that program. So it's a lot of time it's driven by a request, but sometimes it's just reviewing crash records, or just proactively going out and identifying locations.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So to add to that, what is the ongoing process to get these corrections done? So can you walk us through?
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening here, especially on that corridor. We have the underline coming through. We have
Right.
construction. We have a lot of things going on.
Right.
How do we make sure that, the process, and if we need help with grants or anything the FDOT needs, how do we get that process going so we can start getting the ball movement on some of these corrections?
Right, so what will happen next, we'll prepare a document outlining the safety issues that we have identified and suggestions for addressing these safety issues. The DOT will take that, they'll look at those suggestions, and they'll say, okay, let's collect some more data, collect some more information, and see which of these ones we would like to advance. Then they would have to, they'll identify some, they do those studies, they'll confirm, okay, we want to install a signal in here. Then they'll try to identify funding. Especially for safety, there are several sources for funding projects, safety funding. And I guess I can't speak for the DOT, but I don't think it will be difficult funding some of those lower cost safety improvements. Like, a signal crossing will be relatively low cost, although by today's standards, mass stamps and stuff can be expensive. So maybe close to $1 million, I think. My project manager is here from FDOT. He may be able to answer the finance part of it.
Can I, and I have a piggyback question to Commissioner Gaia. So I appreciate you all doing the study. This is very helpful information. We had started some conversations with, at the time, Jose Enrique Cueto, when he was at DPTW, about a few intersections, mostly in this corridor. And I wanted to build on that conversation, just share some thoughts with you about what was presented very quickly. In terms of I don't think this study was intended to discuss capacity enhancements or any the functionality of any existing intersections. Obviously, you did highlight on the congestion on slides 11, and particularly two intersections that need some more substantial reorganization are at 62nd Avenue, US 1, and 80th Street. We have, I don't know that they need a dedicated, I'll tell you, speaking for myself as someone who lives south of US 1 and uses 62nd every day, going both north in the AM peak hour and south in the PM peak hour, while there's certainly congestion, a lot of it is due to the fact that the intersection in the PM peak hour gets blocked. So the dedicated lefts are not, to me, as critical. What is critical is creating some more through capacity northbound in the morning for dedicated right turns. And the right-of-way is constrained by the FPL pole. So one thing we had talked to DPTW about was, can we work with you all and cobble together some road impact fee money to buy some right-of-way, relocate those utility lines, which again is not an inexpensive proposition, and begin to kind of create some capacity both there and on 80th Street, where we have, again, mostly in the PM peak hour, heading westbound, congestion that backs up all the way to 62nd Avenue and 80th Street. So those are two critical intersections. If you can also talk to the process that we can elaborate on with your agency to look at those capacity enhancements as well.
Right. So before I start, I want to introduce myself. I'm Xavier Llerena. I'm with the DOT Traffic Ops Office. So I've been working with Winston, the RSNH team, on the RSA, and it would be good if we can widen the road, always add capacity. Like you said, the challenge is the spacing, and the RSA focus on optimizing what's existing currently. If somewhere in the future we have that possibility to widen the road or acquire right-of-way for a low cost or a good cost, that would be something we can
Jim,
look into.
I think from our perspective, we want to understand how we create the opportunity to acquire the right-of-way. I mean, there's no,
Yes.
for us, there's been some discussions in the past about development or the redevelopment of that mall that houses the Petco. Quite honestly, from my perspective, what I'd love to see it repositioned, because I think it could be more than what it is today. Until we fix this intersection, there's really nothing that we could allow there that would make any sense, because that intersection doesn't work today. And the same is true 80th Street. So those are two areas where I think, speaking for myself, and I think the body probably agrees to me, we really need to work with you all very aggressively to figure out how we acquire the right-of-way, what the cost sharing of that looks like, and how we create the capacity, because if we're going to do anything meaningfully to improve the conditions around that intersection from a development, non-development perspective, just the functionality today, to meet today's need, we need to kind of go beyond just looking at what we have and, you know, biting the bullet, frankly, and saying we need to go ahead and acquire that additional right-of-way. There's really no solution, I think, that you could design in the interim that would make the conditions there any more optimal. We appreciate the pedestrian enhancements that have been done recently. I think those certainly make a better condition for crossing those intersections, but in terms of getting people or cars to those intersections, they're not adding a whole lot by way of new capacity. So I'd just like to understand what we can do to kind of push that process along, because there are a lot of wonderful short-term improvements here, but those two long-term enhancements to those intersections, to me, are mission critical for us.
This is something we can coordinate with our FDOT right-of-way office to see how we can go about acquiring those parcels. Like you said, working with the utilities to see if we can test the possibility of widening the roadway. That's something we could definitely discuss with our right-of-way office.
How do we start that conversation formally? Do I need to send a letter to the district secretary?
We can get in touch with our district right-of-way manager to see how we can go about that.
Because I'd love to follow up with you offline, and you know, we started that conversation, it kind of got put on hold. I think our staff was under the impression that this study would address those issues. Clearly, it has not. For me, I just don't want to lose my focus on that. So if I need to initiate this with formal correspondence to the district secretary, happy to do that. Let me know what the best way is, and we'll get it done. We just want, it's mission critical, frankly, if we're going to do anything for today and the future, to really look at what we have there by way of right-of-way. And to me, the answer is obvious. We've got to, unfortunately, take a portion of McDonald's landscape area, right, to add, you know, capacity for a dedicated right turn movement. And the northbound condition, I don't know what we look at the southbound condition across that intersection, but there may be some other things that need to be done. There could be a dedication from the property owner that previously wanted to develop the site. Lots of things that we can look at, but again, we need to work with you guys hand in hand to get that done. Yes, Madam Vice Mayor.
As he's saying that, something occurs to me. You've got on 63rd and on another one where there's a possibility of removing that left-hand turn, but that then just pushes everybody more onto 62nd, and so it's like a self-defeating prophecy. So that's something that I think.
That's exactly
yeah.
why I mentioned these
Yeah.
capacity enhancements, because
Yeah,
I think it's, for me as a user, it's obvious that at least the left turn movement southbound on 61st should be eliminated tomorrow, right? With some of the recent physical modifications to the right-of-way, there used to be the ability to make a right turn, right? But now everyone's stuck queuing behind that left turn mover in the morning AM peak hour, which they're never going to get across. So you're absolutely right, Madam Vice Mayor. We change the condition upstream. We're going to push people onto an already deficient intersection. So again, for all the possible benefits of these enhancements, until we really deal with the mission critical issues, I think we're just kind of, it's just, again, window dressing. I'm not trying to be offensive, but it's just kind of moving pressure points to already deficient intersections.
Right, and this is more of a midterm to short-term improvement. Anything that would require right-of-way, that's long-term. So we're looking long-term, midterm, and short-term.
Okay. Further questions? None? I just wanted to ask, again, highlight, I know that in some of the presentations, the mention of fencing along segments. I don't know if that's consistent with what the underline is envisioning for those segments. I thought they were looking at more of a natural landscape barrier. If you could just articulate what you guys see as a way to deal with that. Obviously concerned about pedestrians crossing in inappropriate places.
Right, and throughout the presentation, you will see we have reference to coordinating with the underlying project. We have definitely reached out to the underlying project. We have looked at their plans, but we still need some more feedback from the underlying in terms of exactly what they're planning to do. But we have seen their preliminary plans, and in some sections, they have some kind of fencing between US 1 to prevent jaywalking. So yeah, definitely you have to coordinate with the underlying project on these. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Please, you're
To
right.
follow up what you
Yeah.
said. So is that something that, we need help coordination there with the underline? I think that we have a really good understanding what's going on here on this
We've reached out
corridor.
to them a few times. They haven't been exactly responsive, but we've reached out.
All right, well, if you want to leave your information, we'll see if we can help you out with that. adding on to what the mayor spoke about, where it's mission critical on the traffic allocation, especially with the easements on both 62nd Avenue and 80th. Going back to what the actual program, I think we never really got that answered. What is the process for us to continue to move forward so we can get some of these corrections done? As, because it seems to me there are two different avenues to take here, right? FDOT with what the mayor spoke about, but we also have the FSA program and trying to get all that resolved from a safety perspective, which is still important for our city. So how do we get that ball moving as well, right? Because it seems like it's two, right, Mayor? I think they're two different
Possibly two processes, yeah.
processes, right? Just want to make sure.
Right. So with the RSA, we're identifying issues, then we're gonna group them up to see which ones are maintenance issues, which require follow-up studies from our office, which may be police enforcement issues. So once we group those together, we can go about forwarding it to our maintenance office, possibly programming a new project for a crosswalk. It all depends on the type of issue we're addressing.
Okay, so just to finalize that, Mayor, sorry. Do you have a point of contact here at the city that we deal with directly? I know who it is, but I just want to make sure you guys,
Yes.
it's Aurelio, right?
Aurelio
Okay,
has been
so
our point of
let's,
contact.
this is really important for this commission, is to make sure that corridor is functioning and working well for us. As we continue to make investment dollars into that particular area, it's mission critical that not only are we safe, but we have traffic flowing through there. So just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
One last question. Mr. Manager, maybe you may have the answer to this. Who provides the maintenance, the medians along these segments? Is that something that we're doing or that FDOT's doing?
Yeah, we're in an agreement with FDOT.
Okay.
And so we use a contractor to do that.
Okay.
Not only for US 1, but portions of Sunset Drive.
All the way
as
down
well.
to 80th Street?
Um,
Because I wasn't sure if we did a portion of this right-of-way segment that we studied, or we did all of it. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to
The
that question.
median on US 1 is done through an interlocal agreement or a joint participation agreement with FDOT, and we use a private contractor to do.
Okay, so we have a JPA from 57th to 80th, roughly?
I think it's all the way, yeah, 57. And then we do the same on Sunset Drive median.
Okay, perfect, okay. Thank you all. We appreciate your
guys.
presentation and your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, colleagues, we have a couple folks that we held over from a prior meeting here. And I just want to be respectful of everyone's time and the items that we can tackle on our own. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to take up the next two presentations for a few minutes. I'd like to quickly run through the approval of the minutes, our reports, public remarks, and then take up items, long cheat sheet here, 8, 9, and 10, for which I think there are people here in the audience. And then we'll go back to regular order. Any objection?
No, sir.
Okay. Seeing none, if we can have a motion with regard to the approval of the minutes of May 7th, May 21st, and June 4th.
I'll move the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kaya and a second by the Vice Mayor. Seeing no comments, Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kayet,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes,
Minutes past 5-0.
great. Mr. Manager, your report, please.
Good evening. First, congratulations to the Parks and Rec Department. They successfully obtained their DCF recertification, so all staff obtained the required training so that we can continue to offer programming to our local families. Murray Park Aquatic Center, our summer hours are open, so public swim is offered 7 days a week. That is Sunday through Saturday from 12 to 4 p.m. Morning and evening swim lessons are also available. That's through iSwim Academy. Our big 4th of July celebration is coming up. We welcome everybody to come to Palmer Park. That starts at 5 p.m. Fireworks are at 9 p.m. So there's going to be food vendors, kids zone, rock climbing wall. It's going to be a good time. We invite everybody to come out. And lastly, a reminder that in observation of Juneteenth, City Hall will be closed tomorrow.
Thank you. Any questions of the manager?
Nope.
I actually have one question. What are the costs of the swim lessons that we offer for over the summer?
I'm going to lean on the Parks Director.
I apologize for the not
Tr-
telegraphing this in advance.
Trick question.
Yeah,
No, I don't know the rate. I'm going to lean on the
okay.
Director to provide that.
Good evening. I'll get back with you for the exact cost, but it's between $60 and $80 for residents.
Okay, that's for the week or just,
It's for a 2-week session.
For a
So
2-week
classes are
session.
held Monday through Friday,
Okay.
30-minute sessions, 2-week session, and it's between 60 to 80, but I don't want to give you an exact
Okay.
number at the moment.
by the mom, well, your mom is lovely. I saw her this morning. She says hello. So-
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Director. Okay, moving on, Mr. City Attorney, your report, please.
Just one thing, Mayor, the Form 6 litigation.
Yes, what are we filing?
Yes, you are filing a Form 1, not a
Okay.
Form 6.
Okay,
Okay? I'm going to pass a memo out to you guys that kind of walks you through that process, and that's the latest that we have from the state.
and they've extended the deadline to July 15th, am I correct? I believe we got an email to that effect, that's why, yeah,
That's not what this is saying. This is still saying July 1st.
okay.
So-
If you guys could just confirm that for me,
Yeah,
because
we'll
I thought I
confirm
got
for you.
something from the Ethics Commission
Yeah,
saying that we could file on the portal through July 15th, the Form 1. Okay,
we'll double check with
okay,
them.
thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Nikki, can you please put that in everyone's calendar so
Yes,
that
yes.
we're all reminded versus
Yeah,
having
I
to
was
look at
gonna
an
ask them
email?
to Send me that email as well.
Thanks.
Thank you for that suggestion. Okay, we'll move on to public remarks. First on the list, and the only person on the list, Mr. Levi Kelly. Please come forward, sir.
Where he walked out.
He stepped out. Could someone grab him? Is there anyone online, Madam Clerk, while we're waiting?
Just come back.
Anyone on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand. I don't see anyone on.
Okay, seeing no one online. Okay, we'll move along for the moment. Commissioners, any reports or items you'd like to share?
In trying to get this to be a not quick but concise meeting, I will pass on comments.
I'll say a couple quick comments.
Go ahead.
We
Yep.
did the Father's Day event over at the Adult Center. It was great, good food, good fun. Saw the mayor lose dominoes a couple times. Pretty much it.
And I just quickly wanted to congratulate the South Miami Black Cultural Affairs for throwing an amazing
Oh, that's right,
Juneteenth event. It was really incredible, and I hope we have another great one next year too. Might be what Levi was.
Great.
We were just thanking you, Levi, for a great event on Juneteenth.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly, good evening.
How you doing?
Good, welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to come and give you guys kudos again for your support. We had a great turnout. We had a little bit of history that was told. Had some performers, young people from the community that was involved. So it's a good quality program that we're providing. And once again, I wanted to just kudos to the rec staff there. Those guys are doing a great job over there, so I just wanted to let Quentin know. And then guys in blue showed up, and they were gracious and very interactive with the community. So it's a good positive way to bring everybody together. So I just want to thank everybody again for your support. Thank you.
Thank you again to the SMPCA for their hard work on that. Further reports? Commissioner Liebman, anything you want to share for the good of the order, quickly? Nope, okay. Commissioner Corey? Since we started the meeting off with condolences to the Hunt family, unfortunately, I just learned while sitting here that Lauren Weed, the daughter of Bob Weed, who is the owner of Strictly Tennis, just passed away recently, today. So we just want to extend our condolences to Bob and his family on Lauren's passing as well. With that, we will move on to item 8. Mr. City Attorney, do you need to read the quasi-judicial warning?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Item number 8 on,
Item first.
oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 8, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, granting approval of or denying a request to release a unity of title pursuant to Section 20-5.16 of the Land Development Code for the property located at 6167 Southwest 64th Street, South Miami, Florida.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney, please.
Thank you. Item number 8 on this evening's agenda seeks approval of a release of unity of title under Section 5.16 of the city's land development code. This requires a public hearing. The commission may ask any questions either before or after public comment is closed. Following public comment, the commission may deliberate on the resolution. The quasi-judicial procedures require this commission to consider the evidence presented to it and base your decision on the applicable law and primarily on the evidence presented, whether by the applicant, staff, or members of the public. The staff report and the resolution provide the applicable law and criteria for approval. In this case, the criteria in section 20-5.16, which requires a cessation of the conditions which required the unit of title in the first place. The evidence considered must be substantial competent evidence. That means testimony or other evidence based on personal observation or relevant expert testimony that a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support a conclusion. It is not a popularity contest. It cannot be based solely on non-expert opinions, no matter how fervent those opinions might be. Anyone who wishes to speak on this item should be given an opportunity to speak. If you intend to speak this evening, you may be subject to cross-examination. If you refuse either to be cross-examined or to be sworn in, your testimony will be considered in that context and given its due weight. Anyone who would like to speak on this item, please stand up at this time. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Madam Clerk, just to confirm that all of the advertising requirements were met for this meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. And then Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners, if there are any ex parte disclosures to be made, anyone speak to anyone about this application?
No.
Either for or against, okay.
Nope.
Nope.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, sir. So I think we had a presentation from staff the last time. Commissioner Corey, I don't know if you had a chance to review the record. Do you want staff to remake its presentation?
No, it's okay.
Okay, so I think we're good with staff. I wanted to recognize the applicant. Again, I wanted to take you early, so we kept you here so long the last time. Is there anything you'd like to say by way of presentation on the item?
No, I'm just
Okay.
following up last meeting, so.
Any questions of the applicant, colleagues?
No, not of the applicant.
Okay.
One of the concerns you guys had was to view what the intent was. Did you guys get to see that? Is that something that was still pertinent here or not necessarily?
I mean, I've seen, I believe, a summary of the proposed development parameters for the homes. You know, still have some concerns, but I want to hear the rest of your comments and see, you know, where everyone is on this item.
I personally do not have any concerns with this particular project moving forward.
Okay. Mr. Corey?
No, I do not.
Okay. Madam Vice Mayor?
I do not.
Commissioner Liebman?
Yes, you brought up a great point, Mayor. I believe last time, there are no comps because these were non-conforming lots. Like, get into it, but again, I champion legislation. And as you pointed out in the last meeting, Mayor, the homes that we were comparing this to are 35% larger. So, yeah, that's a concern. Apartments are bigger than these homes.
Yeah, I had the same concern, and again, I didn't see that there was necessarily a change in condition from the time that the unity was imposed, but with that said, Madam Director, you want to add something for the record?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorami Carrera, Development Services Director. So when I spoke to the owner last time after this was deferred, he did make known to me that if he would have known that we would not release the unity of title, that he would have never entered into the unity of title. So for him, that is a very important, fact about how he entered into that unity of title.
Okay. Appreciate that information. Is there a motion on the item?
I'll go ahead and move the motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Do we need to open a public hearing?
It is a public hearing, so we'll table we'll have a motion and a second. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address item 8 regarding the release of a unity of title for 6167 Southwest 64th Street? If there's anyone in the chamber, please come forward at this time.
And no one online.
Seeing no one in the chamber and no one online, we will close the public hearing. We have a motion by Commissioner Kaye, a second by the Vice Mayor. Any final comments, colleagues? Commissioner Liebman, go ahead.
I would like to hear your position.
My thoughts are unchanged, Commissioner. So, you know, I had the same concerns as before, but, and I recognize, appreciate the comments from the director. But, you know, we have a motion, we'll vote it up and down, and we'll see where this ends up.
Commissioner Kayan,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman,
Yes, but I want to reserve the right to change my vote. So,
I'll be a no, Commissioner Liebman. So,
Vice Mayor Bonilla.
all right.
Do you want to say anything else before I vote, or no?
No, I'm sticking with the no.
Okay, I'll vote yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
I'll be a no. Item passes 3-2. Okay.
Interesting.
I'm sorry.
3-2.
So again, I want to understand, does that release the unity or not? Or
That
did it-
does release. the
Okay,
unity.
perfect. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Thank you for clarifying, since we do have some unique rules here in South Miami. Okay. Okay. Colleagues, thank you for disposing of that quickly, and thank you for coming back out this evening, sir. If you can read quickly item 9 into the record.
Item 9, in the ordinance of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, amending Article 3 zoning regulations of the Land Development Code to modify provisions applicable to townhouse development, including creating a new zoning district known as RT 18 Townhouse Residential, and providing for applicable regulations.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Again, this is also a public hearing item, since it's on second reading. Mr. Alvarez, thank you for your patience last time. Want to take you a little bit earlier, as I kept you here a long while. Do we need, I was going to ask my colleagues, I was able to sit down with Mr. Alvarez between meetings. My issues were addressed. Is there any need for a presentation again on this item, colleagues?
Can you clarify what those issues were?
I just had some very minor, I don't even remember, frankly. We met probably 10 days ago. I know, Mark, if you want to quickly recap what my concerns were.
One of them was about the ADUs to limit it to low income, or the top of it would be low income and not have moderate income mixed into that. The other was about the garages, that the building code requires, the requirement for glazing on 20% glazing would be
That's right, yeah.
difficult to meet. The other was a little more general, just to make sure that there was a good understanding. We had included from first reading to second reading an additional table, because it really, all of the criteria just weren't fitting in that multifamily table anymore. And in the process, we added a criteria for smaller properties. Basically, we did not want to, when we do map out the townhouse zoning, we did not want to make all of the single-family homes legally non-complying, was one purpose. The other purpose was, and I think you just had a hearing for a property in that area, we note that there's a lot of properties south of and north of Southwest 64th Street that are legally non-complying in the RS4 district. We're not rezoning those, but we wanted the zoning category to apply to those if somebody wanted to apply to them, and create a possible legislative solution to building on those properties that are 25 feet wide in some cases. More of a zero lot line development, but something that has already occurred there, but we would make it something that's compliant with the code. So it could be applied there as well as a legislative solution. So there was a whole column that was put into that to create that use of the townhouse district. If we're not going to go through the presentation, I do want to add one Scrivener's error that I want to correct before we go on with the second reading. It's on line 271. It's the new table, in fact. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth line down, where it says maximum net area on the first most left-hand column, says 12,000 square feet. It should say 5,000 square feet.
What exhibit is that? See?
It's I'm sorry, it's Exhibit B. It's the actual code.
Line
Exhibit B,
271. 271.
Right. Go down the first column to where you see 12,000. It should be a 5,000. So we would want to correct that before we go on. So that would be it, unless if you want to go through the presentation, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you for summarizing my questions. I had forgotten, honestly. Colleagues, any further questions of Mr. Alvarez? Okay, seeing none, we will open up the public hearing. At this time, if anyone would like to come forward and address this commission with respect to item 9, which is an amendment to our zoning ordinance, zoning regulations creating a new zoning district known as RT 18. Public hearing is now open. Seeing no one in the chamber, Madam Clerk, is there anyone online?
Anyone online, please raise your virtual hand. No.
Seeing no one online, we will close the public hearing. Colleagues, is there a motion on item 9?
I move the item.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Liebman, a second by Vice Mayor Bonich. Any closing comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish,
We're going out of order to keep us on our toes? What? Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Item passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. If we could read item 10, please.
Item 10, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, comprehensively amending the City of South Miami Comprehensive Plan, specifically the future land use element to provide for development of the enhanced town center area and major corridors with surrounding development supportive of the town center, specifically by amending the future land use element.
Thank you. Mr. Alvarez, you're recognized.
Thank you again, Mark Alvarez, Cordina Group. This is the first reading for the comprehensive plan land use amendments that we have proposed. It went to the planning board on, I believe, in April. I'd like to go through it. This is the first reading. This will be the reading to transmit it for review by the state and other agencies. I'll go through the process and I'll try to be reasonably quick. Yep, it's not working. So we have how this fits in, and I wanted to go through this. I won't read through everything, but we have an aggressive program of I'll be here. I'll be a regular here, I think, through the end of the year. We just passed on the townhouse zoning text. That was our May item for June, which is what we're in. We're doing the comprehensive plan land use plan text amendments. So typically, we would do a comprehensive plan land use amendments with text and map. We're dividing things up because we want to get the text done. We have a lot of changes to support the zoning code that will be coming forward in months forward. And we feel like we could get the text done a little more simply, and then we'll do the actual map amendments, which will be a much more extensive process of notice. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think it could be quasi-judicial. In total, it's a lot of acres, and it's not, but there may be areas where we have to consider it quasi-judicial. So it's going to be a longer process. So the basic schedule is in June, we are going to start the comprehensive plan text amendments, which is tonight. If it's passed tonight, we would transmit that for review by the state. In July, we'll be coming back to zoning again. And all of the amendments tonight will support the future zoning text amendments that come. In July, the transit supportive district amendments will come, and then we've made some changes to that already with the name in particular, but we'll be coming in with more amendments to that to essentially, really this is where the process started. We wanted to change the hometown district. We want to make sure that those texts meet the needs of the hometown district, as well as have some transitions going into the neighborhoods. The neighborhood mixed use will be in August. This was something that we started on very early. It was going to be a replacement for a lot of the business office and a lot of the commercial uses that are mixed into the residential areas. We wanted to convert that for a lot of reasons, for protecting the city's ability to control its own land use from preemption by the state, and we're converting a lot of that. Some of it goes to townhouse, and some of it would go to neighborhood mixed use where we're on the corridors. Mostly that's going to affect Bird Road, 62nd Street, I think that, and some of Sunset west of the downtown. In September, we'll be coming back with the comprehensive plan land use text amendments to adopt. We normally expect about a 60-day cycle for the state review. It can go longer if there are some challenges to what we've done. We've tried to keep it very simple so that we can keep it on track. If that doesn't come back by September, we'll be doing that when it comes, possibly in October. What we want to do is have that done before we go to map amendments on the comprehensive plan, and that's what we're planning for October. And then in November, we would do the map amendments for the zoning text as well. While all this is going on, the city is due for, it's called the EAR-based comprehensive plan amendments. That's where we do an evaluation and appraisal report, or the city does an evaluation and appraisal report, and then changes what it needs to in its policies for the entire comprehensive plan. That will be more or less going on in the background until we're done with this part. We have talked to the state already and advised them that we're doing this very fragmented process and that we are going to make sure that everything fits and pulls together by the end of it. The process we're doing tonight is a land use plan amendment. It's a expedited state review. Expedited means about 60 to 90 days because it's longer for a full review. This would be for both the text and map amendments. That's the whole process there. Basically, it's a process where we have the planning board, which is the local planning agency, did already hear this and approved it. It's come to you now on first reading. It'll be transmitted to the state. The state will distribute it to other agencies and other local governments, specifically the county, South Florida Regional Planning Council, Coral Gables, and who else? Pinecrest. Do we border Pinecrest at all? Yes. And Dade County. So all of those agencies get to review, all those local governments get to review. We expect this to be fairly quick because, again, we've kept it fairly simple. Without the map, especially, we expect it to be fairly fast. The red side of that is a process where a affected party can raise an objection, and that's an administrative process, but it is part of the process that's outlined in Chapter 163, and of course it can hold things up. Again, this has been fairly, without the map part, this is fairly simple. We don't expect that. So just a quick overview, our comprehensive plan has many elements. Future land use plan element, transportation, housing, infrastructure, conservation, recreation, open space, intergovernmental coordination, and capital improvements. They all come together. They all have to be internally consistent. We're only working tonight on what we commonly call a LUPA, a land use plan amendment. The rest of it will happen with the EAR-based, a lot of terminology, but the evaluation and appraisal report amendments will happen later. We're going to start them in the summer, but you will see them probably later in the year. The rationale for the future land use plan amendments is basically we need to make some changes to respond to the market and create a more flexible code. And to create the more flexible code, we have to go to the sort of constitution for the land use plan, the land development regulations, and make sure that we have those flexibilities built into those policies. The city already directs density towards infrastructure, namely the downtown and the South Miami Metro Rail Station. We're adding a little bit to some of the policies to make sure that continues to happen. One of the big ones is to respond to housing needs. We've talked about all these in the zoning code, and we're just backing up one step to the comprehensive plan, which is the overarching document. And then, of course, to assure compatibility.
Is that at the end of the slide? Is that okay? Yeah, sure.
At the end of the slide or the end of the thing, whichever
End of
way
the
you
slide,
think
we'll
is-
let you ask your
okay.
question. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry, before I didn't realize you were moving on. My apologies.
Okay.
The vice mayor apparently has a question about this slide, so Madam Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Yes, when we're talking about responding to housing needs, when you're saying incentivizing affordable and workforce housing, if I'm not mistaken, the way that it's written for us in new developments, it is not affordable, but rather workforce. And I had been speaking with the city attorney on possibilities for having hero housing and that type of thing worked into here because we did not see it in the related project. And there's a list, longer than the phone book. And we're not a priority on there. And I want to make sure that as we move forward, we are the priority. I love everybody on the planet Earth, but I love South Miami more. And it's not okay with me for other people to go first. And I don't know how we do that legally. And that's why we have amazing city attorneys. But before we send this off into the universe, the two of you need to make sure first that we're not doing affordable housing. If I'm not mistaken, what we've discussed over and over and over is workforce housing. And second, that it has the contingency that I had spoken to the city attorney about.
So, if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Alvarez. Yeah, so this is like a generalized policy document. That's what the comprehensive plan is for, where we're going to address everything you just talked about. is within the zoning code text amendments. And we are, you know, presently, we have requirements. We're going to try to go to more of an incentive-based system, as we've talked about.
Yep.
As this commission has discussed. So that's part of all of that.
Okay, and when we send this off to whoever it is,
Yes.
will it have that affordable housing verbiage in it?
It will have the verbiage that you have in your packets. Let me see, regarding the affordable housing.
Yeah, I see it
provision.
on page 4, number 6, is where I see it specifically called out. I might have missed it somewhere else, you know, because it keeps talking about it. See, it says some of it on number 5.
So
some
let me,
of it on
if I
number
can just
6.
address part of the comment as well. I think the example I think you're reacting to, which is Somi Park, right? There's another layer of policy that will not be impacted by this plan, by these comp plan amendments, will not be impacted by anything that we can do. It has to do with federal policy and requirements regarding lotteries.
Yep.
For the award of units. Agree, we would all love to prioritize more South Miami residents in those lotteries. There were apparently some accommodations made on that project to allow, you know, more people from South Miami to get priority. Not nearly enough, right? 200 units on a 2,000 person waiting list. A lot of folks from outside the community moving in, concerns about gentrification. Again, we would probably have to direct the manager to work with our federal lobbyist
Okay,
to see whether there's a way to have a conversation with HUD locally at the federal level about what kind of exceptions we can fashion to those lottery requirements. That's my understanding of the limitation that they're operating under, both the project sponsor, right, and the PHCD here locally.
yeah.
Okay. On the other portion, I frankly, personally, have zero objection to incentivizing affordable. Frankly, there are really, other than low-income housing tax credits, there are very few suite of affordable incentives that are creating housing opportunities. You know, even at Somi Park, the majority of those units are probably workforce or market. The minority are probably 20% of the units are at 50% or below of AMI. That's where the greatest crisis is across Miami-Dade County. We can have an argument about whether we're doing too much or too little. There's too little housing production across the community generally, which is why prices are so high, because supply is really constrained. And so, I think we want to have a balanced portfolio of housing across the city. And I certainly have had conversations with Vicki Lopez, who'll probably be carrying the housing vehicle next year in the legislature, about the fact as they're thinking about modifying Live Local or doing a new iteration, right? They need to take into account not just preemptions, right? But creating minimums that push communities, some of our neighbors, we're not going to mention them, that do not have a zoning program that allows for the densities that Live Local could otherwise afford them, to come in and require them that they meet minimum thresholds, right? Or they are divorced of their authority. I frankly, my biggest objection to Live Local is I think we have a fairly robust requirement as a minimum. And, you know, we could certainly do more. But where, you know, we are taking steps to allow for housing development to happen, to help with affordability generally, market and otherwise, by allowing, you know, development around our transit station, which we should be doing. We should not have our local autonomy usurped, right? And so I think there is a balance to be struck at the legislative level in Tallahassee about minimums and preemption, and that's the conversation I certainly started there. Just wanted to share that by way of background. But
You turned yourself off.
yeah, my personal preference would not be to eliminate in our master plan incentives for affordable, because there are very few incentives to build those units. A lot of the production we'll see under Live Local will not be affordable. It will be workforce.
Yeah, I know we could probably argue this one for the next 10 years and not hit on something that I think we all agree on. I just think that pushing private entities to offer affordable housing is not, in my opinion, the way to go. I mean, we have government entities that do that, and pushing that onto private developers, for me, is not a good thing. But
No, I-
regardless.
Madam Vice Mayor, we have to comply with the law, and so the state law requires that we provide, if we have to, we can only require it through an incentive. We can't mandate it, right? And so I think we are trying to kind of right-size our code to deal with the mandate side and give people incentives. I just don't want to wholeheartedly dismiss the incentives. People can choose to do it or not.
Or not.
We hope they will, right? Because there's a tremendous need. But even where there are resources, right, there's too few of them available to even push production, right? You think a former public housing site would be a tremendous reservoir for affordable housing. I just wanted, so the public is clear, my guess is only 20% of those units are actually at the bottom half of that tier, right? Where there is tremendous need, where people have the greatest difficulty accessing any quality units in the market. So,
Okay.
further comments on that, colleagues?
I mean, it's a discussion that we're going to need to have anyway, but, I think that we all see what the problems in Miami-Dade County are and throughout the state of Florida. So whatever we can do as a city and follow the law to make sure that we can comply would obviously be critical for whatever we do moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Liebman, do you want to say something? I can't see, we can't see you on the screen, my apologies.
Oh, he said no.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Corey, did you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to echo the mayor's sentiment. What you said a little bit more eloquently, perhaps, is that, we might be leading regionally in this type of thing, and that might be unfair, but I still think it's the right thing to do to have that type of mixed income within the community, allowing for multi-generational, allowing for many different types of workers within the city. So I'm for it.
Mr. Alves, if you can,
I would just add to that comment, when we do get to the larger set of amendments for what we call the ear-based amendments, we will be working with the housing element. Typically, those kinds of programs are in the housing element. We did something that's fairly unusual. We actually, in the land use plan amendment, because of what we did with townhouse and including ADUs as an affordable component, we actually included it in the land use plan amendment, the land use element, which is fairly unusual. Normally, these programs are all in the housing element, but we're actually including this directly into our land use plan, which is a little bit of a bonus. So to go forward, we have goals, objectives, and policies as the basic structure of any of the chapters of the comprehensive plan. Goals are the overall overarching place that we want to go to. Policies are usually, objectives are sort of measurable outcomes that we would look to at each evaluation and appraisal report, and the policies are considered how we get there. The first policy, we call it 1.1.1, is the one where all the land uses are described. And this is probably the most important one, where we have a lot of changes. And again, these are all the changes that are to allow us to do the zoning code changes as well. The zoning code implements the comprehensive plan. Typically, the comprehensive plan is first, but don't feel bad. Most cities, we all think about zoning more than we think about comprehensive plan. So the discussion went backwards, but we're doing it in the right order. So I have all of the land use plan district or descriptions there, or categories. The blue ones are being modified. The red ones will be deleted, but not right now, unless a change I'm going to ask you to make on the floor. The black ones we're more or less leaving alone. I'm going to go through each one of them. I'll show where they are, not that we're making map changes right now, but I want to show where they are because it helps understand. The first one is duplex residential. Duplex residential is a very small area. It's not what we think. We have duplexes, and they usually happen under the townhouse designation. It's really this area that's south of Sunset, more or less to the west of Baptist. There's a block there between 63rd Avenue and 63rd Court. It's currently, right now, all single-family structures with offices, medical offices in some of them. The change here is really that eventually we'll be replacing it with townhouse. But again, because we don't want to what we can't do right now is we can't delete a category where we have it being used somewhere. We're gonna have to do that a little later when we get to the remap. But I just wanted to, again, let you know what's going to happen with this. It's a little bit of an unusual implementation. It happens where there's really no duplexes to speak of. The townhouse, we talked about townhouse zoning, so this will enable, all that we did with townhouse zoning text changes can't be implemented until we have the comprehensive plan implemented, both the text and the map amendments. But right now, townhouse text would affect a number of areas that have that category on them, and it's all the orange areas that you see on the map. But this will allow those areas, and more intentionally, we want the areas that we remap to townhouse to have a more specific building form. So right now, the townhouse in the city is more of a planned units development type of townhouses. They're a little more spread out. They have internal street networks. We would like to include a form where that's more urban and they're facing the street. We would still allow the form that there's an internal circulation network, but we want it to be more urban. We are, of course, calling it TH18. It's on the comprehensive plan, we're actually going to let it have 36 units an acre, and that will make sure that we have complete consistency with the comprehensive plan for the ADUs. Right now, the state statutes are silent on that. Rather than take the chance, we don't want any objections, so we're going to just do this, this land use element description as a 36 unit an acre. And so it'll implement the TH18, even if all of them have ADUs, we still have it as far as concurrency goes. We have included in this description for the live-work units, because that needs to be in there. And we have included in this description the ADUs. So this completely supports everything that we've done on townhouse. And right now, it would affect all of those orange areas, except that all those orange areas are zoned RT9 and RT6, which doesn't allow them to get there. But when we do the map changes, we'll have this text in place that now will allow 18 or 36, as it may be. Sorry, this is very piecemeal, and this is the way we just have to do this. It's a lot of tracking. Mixed residential moderate density is an area, and I just referred to it in the last presentation. There are a number of, this wasn't, well, I shouldn't, let's see. In 2019, I believe it was, the city took it upon itself to correct some deficient parcels in the area just north of 64th Street and just south of it, not exactly just, but more or less south of it, to allow them to have what was at that time going to be a townhouse type development. They were not as specific, it was not as specific in the form at that time. It was just allowing residential to happen on a smaller form and have some mix of uses. It was going to be 14 units an acre. It never got enacted. The comprehensive plan description was enacted and passed and adopted, but the zoning code to go with it, I guess, got tabled and never went forward. So we think it's a situation that's worth correcting in the future. So again, we will look at this and we will eliminate it, but we can't do it now. When we do the map amendments, we'll delete this part of the text. Multifamily residential, we had discussed for some time the idea that our density for multifamily throughout the city is fairly low. 24 units an acre, 4 stories is a fairly low upper limit. However, and we had discussed raising that. However, before we came to this hearing and after planning board, we decided it may be the better idea to target where we want to have increased density more carefully and not allow that to spread throughout the city, where we may have unintended consequences and more problems. So all these brown areas are the multifamily residential designation. We will be leaving the 24 units an acre as is. In the areas where we talked about targeting a higher density and a transition from TOD, we'll handle that with the TOD code that comes up in a month following this. So we'll create another TOD subdistrict that creates that transition, creates the higher density, and we don't do it to the entire category where we could have unintended consequences throughout the city. The only other change that's on there right now is to, it has an allowance for office and retail uses. We got more specific and said that they have to be ancillary.
Mr. Alves, I think we have a question. Commissioner Kaya, did you have a question on the slide?
Yeah, so looking at the multifamily residence on south of 74th Street, east of 62nd Avenue, you have that allocation of brown there. Are we saying that that's going to be RM 18, RM 24? Or, because I was under the impression that some of this, you know, and I know Commissioner Liebman had spoken about this, about the higher density positions there at that location. So I think it was at RM 64. No, I
We
forgot
had
what the number was.
discussed 65
yeah.
units
65.
an acre, which was basically just putting it at the same level of the prior density for Sunset Place. However, so the zoning in this area is RT 18, RT 24, there's some RT 6 in there as well.
Correct.
All under the multifamily. A lot of those buildings to this density are actually legally non-complying. They were built some time ago, and they're more than 24 as it is. So on one hand, we know that we'll need a pretty good incentive to redevelop those, especially with the parking. We also want to make sure there's a transition. The only place where we want to do this is where we're transitioning down from Transit Supportive District, what we formerly called TOD. So we're looking at that area, any possibility a little bit to the north or anywhere on the edges of the Transit Supportive District. We might want to do this where we limit what would be Transit Supportive District to only residential, no bonuses, something around
Mark, if I can just jump in and maybe help frame the issue more squarely. I think in my speaking with staff, I think the consensus based on conversations with, you know, stakeholders was that even at 65 units an acre, that area would not transition, right? Because there just was not enough yield with that additional density. So essentially, we weren't going to be accomplishing anything. So rather than invite the prospect of something unwanted happening, I think the idea is to look at it and possibly shape something that's a bit more targeted that would result eventually in some of those assets being repositioned.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Exactly. And then also in addition, we don't affect the areas that are further away from the Transit Supportive District.
I think the Vice Mayor has a comment.
Yeah. Is it possible, while these discussions are happening, for us to have some kind of visibility to it? Because right now, we're sitting and having the conversation. We said this, but we did that, and this, and there's a lot of moving parts. And for somebody who may not be the most well-versed in what you are talking about, it is difficult to follow. So I'm not sure how moving forward we want to deal with that when we do these types of changes. I can't begin to even offer a suggestion other than to say, do we send an email that highlights the changes? Do we put something, hey, do we have a 10-minute conversation and highlight the changes? Something has to happen, because as we move, I understand we're trying to move through this quickly, but we don't want to be left behind while we're moving through this quickly.
Yeah, if I may just add a little context to it, we're not making these map changes right now. These map changes will come before you later in the summer. So what he's giving you right now, I think, is a preview of
Exactly.
where the thinking is at present. That can change, obviously, throughout the process. But this is like before even. So what he's trying to just do is show you.
Yeah, give us a heads up.
Yeah, exactly.
Of, hey, this is what's coming.
Correct.
I get that. I just
Correct.
wonder between the, hey, heads up, this is what's coming, and
Yeah.
hey, you're voting on this right now, it's over, goodbye, if there's going to be some middle ground.
Yeah. I think the point is it's not over and by, right? So today's action is the first step of a bunch of other reviewing agencies that are going to send us their comments, their feedback, and we certainly, if there's something here you want addressed, you know, I know that for Commissioner Liebman and Commissioner Kaya, there's been some interest in this area south of 74th Street and seeing how we get more, you know, we've got some older product, they'd like to see it modernized, you know, improved, all laudable goals, but I think the initial feedback from staff was 65 units, talking to people that would, you know, could consider buying it, redeveloping it, transacting it, it's not going to get you there, because, you know, most of those lots are not an acre. So you're going to get, where you have 30 units, you're going to get 41, right? And so those 11 additional units really don't make the economics work.
Yep.
Okay? And again, we don't know if we want to, I don't know personally that I would be comfortable designating that a density of 150 units, which certainly would get people motivated, but it's up against a single-family neighborhood. So those are, I think, the balances they're trying to strike as they analyze, you know, these different areas.
Thank you.
And just to add, Mayor, I think that my concern was just to make sure that the nomenclature or the text amendment reflected that. So I didn't know that maybe RM 24 is actually be the text amendment moving forward, and I was concerned with that. That's why I was bringing that up.
All good questions. Okay. Continue, sir.
Yeah, and it's a good question, and actually we're trying to construct a framework, and one of the other concepts that's important is that we, as we go forward, particularly in the transit supportive district in downtown, we do want to have some incremental changes. So we may, for example, if we did make a large change on the end and offer a lot of density, we might have something happen there and absorb the market where we really wanted it more in the center. So we are dealing with the problem of trying to create a framework, and then as we get to the mapping, we'll have to do that fairly incrementally too. But we create the framework that if somebody wants to apply, they have the framework there already, and they don't have to create something. Does that make sense? So, yeah, we'll get through there. Commercial, retail, and office. Again, very little change here. There are two things going on, and there's small text amendments. We don't really have much plan of change for this. It's the red area along US 1, but it's also a red area on Bird Road. One of the things that we wanted to change the text on that was, one, to take some of the language that specifies commercial uses as retail or office. We want to open it up a little bit more and deal with that in the zoning code. The other was to specify that it's really for US 1, because US 1 and Bird Road are very different contexts, very different forms, and from the beginning, we would like to, at some point, rezone Bird Road to something that's more appropriate to Bird Road. So we added language into commercial, retail, and office saying that it's really specific towards the type of highway that US 1 is. Big parking lots in front, you know, which we don't want on Bird Road. So that's the only text there. Mixed-use commercial residential. This is the underlying comprehensive plan element designation for the hometown district. And it is actually what limits the hometown district's zoning. That was actually how we started on this, because we knew we couldn't change the zoning unless we changed the underlying comprehensive plan designation. However, we will be remapping that. The intent is to remap that to the transit supportive district. However, mixed-use commercial residential is a very good fit for the future neighborhood mixed use. It's 4 stories, 24 units an acre. It would really fit that well. So we're going to keep the text. It will end up being remapped as we get to the map, but we're going to just create a little more definition as to vertical and horizontal mixed use. And also added language in there to direct it to where we want it. So in other words, we would like it to be on the corridors, the half section line roads and the section line roads. Bird Road, 67th, 62nd, Red Road, and going the other way, Bird Road, I guess, Miller, 64th, and Sunset on the west side. West of downtown. So we added language to, again, focus that to where we really want it to happen. The transit supportive development, all that's in this text amendment is to change the comprehensive plan to catch up with what was done by ordinance before. We added, it's no longer TODD, it's TSDD, Transit Supportive Development District. But again, we did, similar to the commercial areas, we took out some of the more specific language about the types of commercial uses. We want to leave that open and control it more with the zoning code. And provide incentives as we get closer to the Metro Rail station, that's still in there. Downtown SoMe, again, this is just the comprehensive plan. We've had some issues before where the comprehensive plan doesn't get updated. We're just going to update it to match the ordinance that was passed in November of 2023 for downtown SoMe, for the downtown SoMe comprehensive plan text. RLC, residential limited commercial, we would like to delete this, but again, it's kind of slated for, we'll delete it when we do the map amendments. It's basically the underlying land use for the west side of 62nd Avenue. It doesn't allow a lot of density. It's 5 units an acre and mixed use, completely unused in its capacity. We will delete it later, but we have to leave it in right now because we can't leave land in the city without a nation to belong to, so to say. So it's slated to be deleted, but at the time that we do the mapping. And it would be replaced by neighborhood, it would be zoned later on with that designation with neighborhood mixed use, some transit supportive development district, I'm sorry, neighborhood mixed use and townhouse. So getting out of policy 1.1.1, which has all of the descriptions of the different land uses, we have a few other things. They're fairly small. We have a goal and an objective about greenhouse gas reduction. We just wanted to be very specific that one of the things that we can do to have greenhouse gas reduction strategies is to add transit and walkable neighborhoods. We intend to do transit and walkable neighborhoods, compact mixed-use development in downtown. We didn't say it, and we added that language to make sure that that also supports greenhouse gas reduction strategies, which also helps us to support our land use plan, because we can say that supports greenhouse gas reduction strategies. The hometown district has its own objective in the future land use element, and we think that we can delete that because we will be replacing it in its entirety with the transit supportive development district. We will keep design aspects of the hometown district, but we'll include it in the transit supportive development district code. This is, it's two names of two different things, but we'll include that in the code, particularly as we talk about what fronts along Sunset. But again, we will be removing that. We intend to remove that in the future, and we can remove it at this point from the text. It doesn't leave any land without a description. Transit supportive development district, it's again mostly language to make it TSDD instead of TODD, and also to generalize the uses. And also we added language to support the relocation of Gene Willis Park. Again, one of our issues going forward is we have a park designation in the parking lot outside of here, as well as Gene Willis Park, and we want to be able to move the parks around within the site, the City Hall site. TDR removal, transfer of development rights is right now in the comprehensive plan as a mechanism to move intensity away from, it's used for the special flood hazard area in the downtown. We don't need it, and we have, it's been very clear that we don't want to have TDRs as a mechanism at all, so we're removing the entire policy. The CRA is something we thought that we should probably remove. It's mentioned, we don't have a CRA anymore. However, on further thought, because this will interact with a lot of policies in the housing element, and we decided to leave it in until we do the year-based amendments, the larger set of amendments. And finally, on Bird Road redevelopment, again, it's just language to add mixed-use redevelopment as a tool for Bird Road. Again, that's really speaking to the issue where we have the commercial residential category on Bird Road, and we would like to remove that and have something more appropriately scaled in the future. So again, thinking ahead, we made some language changes. We do meet all of the criteria that we need to for being consistent with our requirements, with the rest of the comprehensive plan and the code and all the requirements. We did a very quick concurrency review. We don't have much because it's only text and we're not mapping, but we do have a small increment of changes on concurrency because of the townhouse designation going from what is essentially 8.7 right now to 36. However, none of that can actually happen because they're all zoned something else, but the text does technically cause a small, about 2% increase in trip generation and water use in those areas. We'll continue, that's a big table, and we'll I know it's the first time you're seeing it, but we'll continue to work at that table because we've been really working out all of the things on a lot-by-lot basis. We're using the property appraisers database. So finally, thank you. It's complicated, I know, it's piecemeal, and this is just the way we have to do it. We're trying to do our best to keep track of everything, but I do want to remind you on the first reading that we passed this to transmit, we had in the exhibit that you have deleted mixed residential moderate density and residential limited commercial, RLC, and MRMD. We have proposed to delete those. We don't want to delete those. We want to keep them in. That was a mistake. The timing will be wrong on that. We would leave those properties without the designation. So we would ask that, instruct staff to make that change to transmit, and then we'll transmit it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Alvarez? Commissioner Guy? Nope. Commissioner Liebman? I can't see you, so. Are you good? Any questions? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt item 10 for transmittal?
We need to open a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. This is a public hearing item. If anyone would like to address this commission on item 10, please come forward at this time.
Anyone on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand.
Okay, seeing no one in the chamber and no one online, we'll close the public hearing. Hey, colleagues, is there a motion? Thank you, Commissioner Liebman. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Liebman, a second by Commissioner Corey. Any comments, colleagues? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye?
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Item passes 5-0.
Colleagues, if you allow me one more personal privilege, I'd like to take item M2, since I know we have someone here in the audience. It's a discussion item. Madam Clerk, if you can read that, please, and I guess we'll hear then from our city attorney.
A proposal to allow sales of secondhand goods in a low-intensity office LO district.
Mr. City Attorney, do you want to introduce this item for us?
Certainly.
And does everyone have a copy of the memo that was provided? Okay.
Okay. This is a pretty straightforward item. There's, the code recognizes four types of used merchandise stores. One of those is secondhand goods. It's an establishment not representing the original manufacturer, distributor, or retailer which sells previously owned secondhand or vintage goods, apparel, or products for their residual value as used merchandise. We were approached by a not-for-profit entity, a charitable organization that operates a secondhand goods store in connection with their charity. They are renting property within the LO district, and they requested that we consider allowing a used merchandise secondhand goods store within the LO district. We have 3 LO districts. In the memo, you can see the area. And this was kind of seen as a short-term solution. These LO districts that you see in yellow on the map in the memo will all be, their comprehensive plan designation will be converted to the one that supports the mixed use, the mixed neighborhood use, which would allow this use anyway. So this is, to allow this use to move forward, if it's your pleasure to do so, in the interim period while this is being adopted.
And tonight's action, if we were to advance this, it would refer basically to the planning board for discussion, correct?
Yes, it would send it to the planning board and then would come to you for 2 readings.
Okay. Questions of the city attorney? None? Okay, is there a motion to refer this amendment to planning board? There's a motion by Commissioner Liebman,
I'll second it.
a second by Commissioner Kaye.
Quick question, do you want to also consider?
Yes, the
other types of
consignment, and
uses
I would say yes. I mean.
Yes? Okay.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so there's another 2 uses, consignment and antique stores that would be authorized. I mean, I'm thinking of the children's exchange, it would be, so if the mover and the second are amenable, I would also suggest we include them, so.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, so the seconder is amenable, so is the mover. So the motion has been presented. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye?
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
5-0 to go to the planning.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Okay, we'll get back to regular order. Colleagues, you want to hear presentations, or you want to just dispense of the action items before we,
Why don't we dispense of
okay.
the consent items and?
Let's take the consent items. Are there any items on the consent agenda anyone would like to discuss? Seeing no, are you good on all the consent items?
I just had a question, and when I had my meeting with our city manager, I had asked him, seeing that there was $85,000 on number 5 from the
Okay,
police
so
legal
let's
services.
pull number 5,
Okay.
okay? So we'll pull number 5. Any others on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, others, Madam Clerk, if you can read items 1 through 4, and I'll happily entertain a motion.
Yes. Item 1, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving the purchase of cheerleading equipment from VS Sports LLC for the South Miami Grey Goals cheer program in amount of $5,600. Item 2, a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami approving the renewal of an annual software subscription with Dash Platform LLC DBA Day Smart Recreation for recreation businesses management software in amount not to exceed $5,499.96. Item 3, a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving a proposal and project agreement with Kimley Horn and Associates for permitting and construction administrative services related to the Priority 1 structure and waterproofing repairs to the South Miami Municipal Parking Garage in amount of $37,296. Item 4, a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving the purchase of a tire changing machine from Genuine Parts Company, DBA Napa Auto Parts for the Public Works Department Motor Pool Division in amount not to exceed $11,999.
Great, thank you for that. Is there a motion on items 1 through 4?
I'll move the motion.
I move the items.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kai, a second by Commissioner Liebman. Thank you for that. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye.
Yes.
Commissioner Corey.
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish. Mayor Fernandez.
Yes,
Sorry.
Consent passed 5-0.
thank you. Do you want to take item 5, Madam Vice Mayor, at this time?
Yes, please.
Please, okay.
Um,
Madam Clerk, if you can read item 5, please?
Item 5, a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, relating to a fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, authorizing the budget transfer of $85,000 from the Police Legal Services account number 001-1910-521-3120 and the Personnel Division Liability account number 001-1330-513-4510 to the City Attorney's Other Professional Legal Services account number 001-1500-514-3410.
Thank you. Madam Vice Mayor, you're recognized for questions of the City Attorney.
Thank you. It's more of, I had, during my meeting with him, asked for alternatives for pulling the money from the police legal services to see where else we could
Okay,
also
so your question is
move
related
funds.
to other financial accounts that we could draw upon for the, okay. So, Mr. Riverall, I don't know if you've had a chance to address that question of the manager?
So, Vice Mayor raised the issue, had mentioned that her question specifically was on the police legal services line item, and had mentioned that staff had looked at line items that we do not anticipate for the balance
So,
of the
Manager,
year.
before you move on, can you just, for our benefit, because I'm not, don't have the recall, what was that line item budgeted at for this fiscal year, and where are we relative to the budget amount for that specific line item? If you can, if you've got that information.
You have a balance? Yeah.
Mr. Riverall, you're recognized.
Good evening. The balance on that is $40,000. It's for litigation related to police matters. When we start looking at other line items that it doesn't affect operations for the termination of the fiscal year, that was the one that we identified. And there have been some legal services provided for the police, hence why it's designed to do exactly what it's supposed to be doing.
We had a part of those funds also would be for arbitration, and we have no.
Pending
no
arbitration
present
matters?
Yeah, no present matters forthcoming. I also took a look at some of the expenditures that, that were city attorney expenditures that were related to police, to kind of see a correlation potentially, and about 9 different categories, 7 of them, or almost actually 8 or 9 of them, touch police matters. They were having to do with the police compliance hearing, questions about police pension, We did a cadet, police cadet MOU that had to be reviewed legally. And so there's been some miscellaneous expenses that, you know, would be deemed police. But, yeah, so I think that fund was identified just because we don't have any arbitration forthcoming. And even if there were going to be a grievance that results into an arbitration, by the time we're into that, we're in the next fiscal year, basically.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the background.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, there was a question about alternate accounts. So are there any alternate accounts that were identified? That could be,
Alfredo said no.
you did not? Okay.
Right, yeah.
That's fair enough. I just want to make sure we got you that answer, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, further questions, colleagues? Okay. Commissioner Liebman, are you good? Okay, thank you, sir.
So I'll move the motion to approve?
You'll move the motion to approve. Madam Vice Mayor, any other questions you wanted answered?
I'm good.
Okay. So a motion by Commissioner Kai, is there a second?
A second.
A by
Second.
Commissioner, okay. Can I acknowledge Commissioner Corey this time? So a motion by Commissioner Kai, a second by Commissioner Corey. Any further discussion of this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you can read the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonish,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Item passes 5-0.
Okay, colleagues, we've got items 6, 7, and 2 presentations, as well as a discussion on the noise ordinance. What's the board's pleasure? What would you like to take up next?
And I would say for the audience to get the discussion items out.
The discussion item on, okay, Commissioner Liebman, where you want to go? I'm seeing some,
I was going to say, we have 2 items left on the agenda. Let's run through the agenda. 7's housekeeping items, so.
okay. Let's run through, okay, then we'll take the order of the day. Let's go through the presentations then. Mr. Mouillet, you're recognized.
Mr. Mayor, while we're set up for that, this presentation is a result of the placemaking work that Plus Urbia has been doing, and they're here to report on their status, Task 1. So what you're going to be hearing is some of the findings as Task 1, which is really more the analytical, and they've already begun doing work on other tasks, but we wanted to kind of bring this to a close to share their findings on the analytics portion.
Appreciate that. Mr. Mouillet, is there any way we can keep this to 15 minutes so we can have some questions? I'm sure there will be a few.
I will do my best.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that then.
If this works.
Hopefully your clicker works, yes.
All right, perfect.
There we go.
So I'll try and keep it very brief. I know you have a lot on your plate. Fortunately, you've already heard a lot about zoning and a lot about planning and a lot about roads already, so we're perfectly teed up. And I can probably skip a lot of that information. As you know, we've put together a report that analyzes and is a discovery report. And it helps us, as you know, this is the phase 1 of 5 different tasks that we have. And this allows us to have a benchmark and information so that as we design, as we move forward with the tasks, we know where we came from and what the existing conditions are. So you're very familiar with the area. I'm not going to go through it. We have a boundary that we're looking at with a focus on Sunset Drive. And we've looked through your studies, and honestly, you've already got a lot of the policies in place, and you've already got a lot of the planning in place, and you already, as I just heard from Corradino, you already are moving forward with some changes to the zoning, which is going to help a lot of the work that we are going to be working on. More than anything, within the hometown district, currently you have 40%, only 40% of your area in the hometown district is TOD. So looking at TOD and making sure that this includes a larger area, it will help in part to emphasize the need for pedestrian access to the station, which is very much related to the work that we have at hand, which is the roadways. We've also noticed that you have a lot of vacancy and underutilization of some of your parcels around here. So, and there's also a lot of demand. I have here with my colleagues, Business Flair, that will talk to you about the type of demand that we're seeing and positioning the downtown in a way that it can capture that energy and that potential investment will be beneficial for the entire city. Generally, and again, I'm going super fast, so you can stop me if you want.
We will, no worries.
We've looked at not only at quantities, but also at the quality of the street. You'll notice that, and this is no surprise to anybody, I'm sure, to the east, you've got more of a quality of a space, and to the west, it's somewhat deficient. Part of our task moving forward will be to make everything,
Uniform.
a 10 out of 10, okay? I could go on. There's more detail to the report, so if you feel that I'm going too fast, you can always read the report after. A few pictures to show you the conditions. I'm going to let my colleague from Business Flair, Allison Justice, to come speak in the next slide, but just to say land use and the frontage that we have on these streets is just as important as the street itself. So this is why we feel that we really need to take this first step to move to the next one.
Thank you.
Good evening, Allison Justice. So as far as the data goes, let's look at the socioeconomic context of the downtown area, and we're really looking to activate both the east and west side of US 1. North and south side. We know that most of the activity is on the south side. So in looking at the population, the city's median age is fairly young, although it's ticked up a couple of a couple of points in the last few years. So at 38.5 is the median age of the town. You have a lot of home ownership. So there is about 50% home ownership, which is pretty high, and you have a lot of family owners here as well. So there's 55% family households, which is higher than Miami-Dade County. The income is higher than the county.
Allison, just on that point, what year is that median income from?
That was done 55%. I'm assuming that he pulled this in 2022
Okay,
census data.
because I think we're at 79,000 now
Okay.
countywide, so that's why I asked. Okay.
Yeah. So you're in a good position. You're in between two higher income cities, which is a good spot for South Miami to be in. It makes you more attainable and more attractive. And as with, you kind of call out here, as with most of South Florida, housing transportation costs are very high, ranging between 35% and 52%. That is not uncommon. We see that a lot, which is why you talked about affordable housing, workforce housing, and so forth. When you look at the office real estate market and the retail real estate market, you have these reports, so there's a lot of graphs in there, but I really just want to call out what the main points of these are, and it is that there is more demand really than there is supply. You have a low vacancy rate both in the office market and in the retail markets. There's not a lot of turnover because people don't want to leave, because there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of places for them to go. So you see both your office and retail market really holding pretty steady. So when you look at your charts, you'll see kind of really some steady trends. Vacancy rates are lower than the average for the office market, and again, in the retail market, it's dropping. You'll see also in the retail space, the retail confidence, the cap rate is low at 5.35%. That means it is a 10-year low. It means there is confidence in the retail market, and you could stand to use more retail facility spaces.
Allison, before you move on, just on this slide, when you say not all prospective tenants can be accommodated, what kind of tenancies do we not have product for?
Both the retail and the office. So there are the vacancy, again, being below even the averages, means that there are people looking that aren't able to find the spaces that they need.
But we don't have. Is there any qualitative data as to what the size of the tenancies are today? What's a typical tenancy in South Miami, and are there opportunities that we should be looking at exploiting in terms of encouraging developers to consider building certain kinds of product to bring in a more diverse tenant mix?
Right.
My guess is that we probably have a lot of small solo practitioners or smaller businesses that are occupying our office spaces. Certainly my wife is the prototypical one, right? So I just want to if there's a way to get a flavor of that, we don't need to do it today, but we'd appreciate that subtext.
Yes.
Thank you.
We can get that data. As for the residential real estate market, again, since the pandemic, obviously during the pandemic, there was there's little change in inventory now because during the pandemic, the listings, the sales went down. They really haven't recovered, which means that the supply is down and the demand is up, which is why you see a $400,000 price surge since 2019, between 2019 and 2022-23 in the median house prices. So these projects that we show below, really highlight that you do have some things underway to provide more housing. Hopefully it'll ease that real estate market a bit, but that just shows what you have going on currently. And we also looked at some foot traffic trends downtown. The foot traffic is declining, but it's possibly due to the declining activity in the shops. So there's some things going on there, but you do have some unique customers. So you have a lot of unique customers coming in, but a lot of them come back. So it's getting more activities for people to come back to in the downtown. Locally, though, your visitors are loyal. They come back. The ones that come a lot, and they're fairly local residents as well. 80% of the visitors coming to the east side of US 1. Again, this just highlights the need to activate the west side of US 1 as well. So with that, I will turn it back over to Juan, and we'll move through.
And you're giving me a little bit of overtime. So thank you for that. In part,
You're doing pretty well, Juan, okay?
Well, I still see the 3 minutes there.
No, yeah, ignore
That's
that.
the extra 3 minutes,
Yeah.
right? So to answer your question, there's more information on that report, and we have more data that did not make it into the report because otherwise it would have been a much longer report. But that data we have, and in part is because the latest tenants that have been looking around in South Florida are much larger than what you've got here, and you don't have much new construction. So your 20,000s, your 30,000s, even your 10,000s are difficult to find in South Miami. So you're missing out on some opportunities there. That's because you have an aging downtown with existing, and as Allison mentioned, your tenants are not moving because they don't know where else to go. All right, so with that said, where am I? Right here. So the fortunate thing, is that you own all your streets, pretty much. Apart from Red Road, you own them all. So if you want to make improvements, if you want to make places more attractive, if you want to use the proverbial, if you build it, they will come, you can do it. You have to follow certain standards and regulations, but you pretty much have, unlike other cities, you're in much better position to do it. A really surprising fact, 94% of your workers in South Miami do not live in South Miami. Why am I bringing this up? You've got a lot of commuting in and out. Okay, so we didn't want to just tell you you've got a commuting problem. We wanted to know from where, and that's part of the analysis that Business Flow was doing, is where are people coming from and what roads are they using? So when we're seeing traffic and we're seeing people turning, taking a left, taking a right, where are they going, especially at peak hours, because that's when people get upset, and then they come here and they complain about traffic. Do they not? Okay, traffic and affordability. So that's really interesting, and so that has an effect, a pretty big effect on the traffic conditions. The three major things that we looked at were the level of service, the speeds, and the average annual daily traffic. You can see the one in the middle. I mean, that's pretty telling. People are not driving as slow as they should, and partly is because they're trying to get out quickly. And then we also see that, as you know, US 1 is the one road that has the most traffic. I'm not going to go into details because you already heard DOT, and they were very detailed on that. But needless to say, we looked at, especially on Sunset, the turning conditions, the signalization, and how people turned. There's a bunch of numbers there. Honestly, I don't understand them all. That's why we brought in the engineers. They've got a much more in-depth analysis, and again, we can go over it if you want. But we did make a modification to that chart that to me is unreadable. And I know, Vice Mayor, but this is much easier to understand than what the numbers
don't look
were
at my
showing.
face.
Let me explain it real quick. So these arrows are at the PM. They are the commuting out. I know it is really difficult to graphically show what's going on in terms of traffic. So the arrows are the direction, and the bigger the arrow, the more traffic you've got. As you can, and we, you know, what's interesting is that if you want to increase and if you want to improve your patrons in downtown, which is something that we are really interested in. By the way, people mostly shop in the afternoons on their way back home. That's why we are really interested in the PM and how people are moving out of your city. Remember, 94% of your workers are getting out. And what we would like to do is to figure out a way to retain them so that they spend their money here before they get to their destination. Mayor was saying 94% of your workers are not from South Miami. That's huge. And so everybody's getting in their car. Hopefully, eventually, people will start using more of the Metro Rail and the buses, and I'll show you another slide in a minute. But what you see here is your US 1 is neither capturing or diverting traffic into your downtown. If anything, you see that huge arrow to the west or north, depending on how you look at it. US 1 is in the diagonal.
So people are just driving through and by us,
All right,
essentially.
so it's moving west, right?
Commissioner
And that's the
wants to
biggest
say.
arrow. That's because people moving south from on US 1 and then are then taking an easy right and then getting out. So they're not taking a left, partly because there's no way to take a left on Sunset. But partly, you know, even if you go down on Red Road, you see that's the second largest arrow that we've got. People taking a left on Red Road. They keep on going south. They're not turning into Sunset. So you're not capturing those trips either. I'm going to leave it at that. There's much more to it.
I think we have a question from Commissioner Lieben. Commissioner Lieben, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yeah. Number one, 100% of the commission lives in the city. But no, my point along the line is, yeah, I understand, and that is an exorbitant number in the 90s, but we have a very large retail area and commercial area where the city's only 2.5 or 2.25 square miles. So there's a lot of single family. There's practically no condos, some dated apartments, all low rises. So, you know, it doesn't surprise me when we say that we compare ourselves with other cities, right? We won't have the commercial component that Miami Beach does, but we certainly have, you know, relative to residential, much more than Pinecrest and Palmetto Bay and so forth. But that's one thing we have to consider when we look at that high number, is that we have a large commercial and retail ratio to residential.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think the point is that there's an opportunity to capture more of those people if we offer
I get all
different
that.
product in the city. So,
I get all that. It's not a straight number, is my point.
yeah, no, we agree.
Right, and
Go
we
ahead.
also looked at the residents, Commissioner. So, again, this is a summarized version, a speeded up summarized version of the report. But needless to say, we're going to use everything that we have, including the numbers that you just mentioned with the residents and the retailers, in order to inform the next steps of our report. So, safety conditions. You know, there's pedestrian crashes. Again, I'm not going to go into detail. There's unfortunate pedestrian crashes, and those are probably going to increase as people use the TOD more, the transit more. The more pedestrians you put on the street, the more bicycles you put on the street, the more friction you potentially have. And so again, more of a reason to look at these sections and make sure that we provide as much safety and access to destinations as possible. And yes, sir.
When was the data range for the crashes and all that stuff for you?
This is, and I'll defer
This
to
three-
our engineers.
3 years.
Diana White, the coordinating group. This was 5 years from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2023. So
Thank
5
you,
years.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
We came prepared. So crashes, pedestrian crashes, and vehicular crashes, again, you see where this is at. There's other graphics in the report that I can refer you to. And then, you know, the need to improve bike and ped infrastructure is key. Again, to emphasize the fact that you are one of the very few downtowns that has a metro rail right there. Yes, you have US 1, which is a barrier, and more of a reason to improve that intersection, that connectivity between east and west. And let's not forget that it's not just about the vehicles, it's about getting people on foot and on bike onto the station, especially if most of them are on the east side, right? So that's critical. The other thing that we saw is that in order to improve these, there are some deficiencies in your city today. Some things that are not design flaws, they are just weathered and worn out. Through the inventory, we saw that about 80% of the crosswalks have low visibility. And these pictures are during the day, so you can only imagine walking at night. It makes it even harder, and in some ways, it stops people from actually be on foot. We also noticed in a few places within the study area, those sidewalks are actually missing. Here they are, a few of them. Again, there's more that we did an inventory for. But again, these are things that we want to improve. These are things that we want to highlight today so that as we move forward, we want to make sure that there is no gaps in your mobility within the downtown. Especially in the downtown, and especially if you're going to increase your residential base, increase your retail, increase your office, etc. With that, I'm gonna give this to Curtis and Rogers, who did a more in-depth, we'll still stay under 15, but a more in-depth analysis of the streets.
You're over, but we'll forgive you.
Oh, I have one more. It's just the transit conditions, again, I don't have to tell you, you're very well served in terms of transit. So there is no excuse to get people out of their cars and onto transit if the destination and if the origin is right, and if we provide balanced land uses, which, as I see from your Conradino studies, it is exactly what you guys are doing.
Sorry, this slide reflects the
Yes.
Better Bus,
Yeah, I was going to ask the same.
Better Bus Network project changes
Yes,
as
this
well?
is the latest.
Okay, thank you.
I believe so.
Okay.
Juan, you don't find it concerning that we don't have transit coming in down from 57th Avenue anymore?
I do, but I have not done that analysis. What I've looked at is what exists here today. And so as we move forward, we may find that that is a deficiency that was taken out from the latest update to the plan. You do have most of the mobility. Honestly, if we're comparing with other cities, again, your transit station, your metro rail is, your biggest asset.
Figuring this out. Hi, I'm Jenny Rogers from Curtis and Rogers, and just going to briefly go through looking at, I don't know how do I see what's on here and there. I'm looking at the next thing.
You just have to do this.
No, I'm just trying to see it myself. I'm like, I have to look up here to see what I'm looking at. Where's the?
Let me show you. You can just press next and next.
Okay, but now, now I see. Thank you. I don't see well enough to look at that and know what I'm saying. Sorry. Looking just at the urban heat island for your area, and you can see the areas that are redder are the hotter areas, and lighter areas are less hot. Pretty obvious here. Just there's definitely a correlation between paved spaces and green spaces being cooler. So we're looking at that. You can look at the canopy that we see around the city. This is sort of a mapping of the existing canopy. There's a fair amount of canopy in some areas and some not so much.
You got to use the clicker so we can see it with you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, see, I hit that and not that.
There you go.
Technology, sorry about that. Some of it, what we did notice about some of the existing canopy, especially in the downtown area, is that it's growing in very restricted conditions. So it can only get so large, and you're going to start having trouble with some of the larger trees in the next few years, probably because of the conditions they're growing in. You can see in the pictures here, like the one on the left is an example of a tree growing in a constricted space. There are ways that we can improve. You can improve the space for the tree with leaving the tree in place. And we've done some of that in Coconut Grove for them. They have a lot of trees there that they're very attached to. And they always want to improve their sidewalk space, but keep their trees. So there are ways that you can do that, that we might make some recommendations for. We also just noticed that, like you have a lot of palm trees around.
Yeah.
The palm trees are pretty, but they're not providing the same amount of shade that canopy trees are. So even if you want the palms grouping them like they are in front of Sunset Place there on the corner of Red and Sunset, we'll give you a little bit more shade. Just so we did inventory along Sunset, all of the landscaping, the parking, the wayfinding, the furnishings, bus stops, lighting. So there's a complete mapping of this in the report that you guys can look at. This is going to help us as we move on to the next phase when we start looking at Sunset Drive and ways to improve it. That's just an example of what the mapping looks like. I'm not going to go through it, but you can see. And then as you go through the report, there are sections. So we did sections all along Sunset, along the east side and west side of US 1. And Sunset, we tried to kind of capture each different section because it changes a lot as you go down the street. This is moving starting farthest east. And you can see we go from palms to trees, we go to have a median, then we don't have a median, and so it keeps changing. And then here there's arcades, some places there aren't. So, and we get on the other side of US 1, and then we have the median in the middle there. Again, more medians. So it's a lot of variety going on. So we'll be looking at ways to kind of unify that in some way, maybe without necessarily reconfiguring the road, but ways to unify it in other ways, right? Whether it's through paving or other amenities. So that's, oops. And just so you know, if you want to go through them, and I'm not going to talk about them a lot, but there's a bunch of, we did a series of other streets around, and the big picture that we got from doing this was that, because we said, oh, we're going to do one typical section of each street, we learned that there was really no such thing as one typical section of many of these streets, so they change drastically sometimes from block to block. So it's just a real inconsistency in terms of the sidewalks and the space and the parking going back and forth. And if you look through this, you can start to see some evidence of that. I mean, some streets are more so than others.
Can I ask just a question? Are they all 50-foot right-of-ways? Or are there different size
There are
right-of-ways?
different sized right-of-ways within
Okay.
this project area too. And some of them we found, some encroachments into, like, we're kind of going, well, the right-of-way should be this, but look, that's there. So there were some interesting occurrences. So the guys who were out in the field were going, I don't know what to call that. I don't know where the right-of-way is there. We tried to look at the plat books, and sometimes it just did not match up. So there's just some inconsistencies. But I think, again, looking at just kind of understanding that there is a great deal of variety in the streets, that it's not a uniform thing. So choosing sort of one solution is not necessarily going to, fit everything. That's just sort of the big picture with that. And that's back to Juan.
Thank you.
And that's it. That's almost the conclusion. But what the challenges and needs that we found, basically what we've learned. So you've just heard the streets here in South Miami are like a potluck, right? You don't know what you're gonna get. Like, what's the expression? It's like a box of chocolates.
Run, Forrest, run.
This was very useful for us.
Don't put baby in a corner.
And the report has a lot more detail. Happy to sit down with each of you as we move on to the next phase if you have any questions about the report itself. But as we move forward, what we want to make sure is that we capture not just a good identity for South Miami, but also the stakeholders' opinions and visions and goals. We would love to meet with you one-on-one once again as we move on to the next phase. I think we have that planned. And we are planning to hold our public workshops, I believe it's in September. So when people are back from vacation, we would like to make sure that everybody is here when we do those.
Through the mayor?
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
So you said that it's scheduled. Is it scheduled? Because it's not on my calendar. I want to make sure that we can start scheduling that.
Not yet. That's what we're planning.
Okay, so, all right.
But we're moving as fast as we can because there's some timeline conditions that we have to meet. But that's the goal. I think that was my 15 minutes.
Maybe 15 and 15, but it's not too bad. Okay. Questions of Mr. Wheeler and his team? Everyone good?
No, I think the data's good. It's a good start, and I think now you guys understand why you guys are here. A lot of challenges.
Just by way of information, I'd like to suss out some more. Again, very interested in prospective tendencies, what the market looks like, what the opportunities are, and also where people are coming from. So I don't know if your cell phone data helps us understand where users are inbound from, like what's our natural retail catchment area. Just like to understand that and the demographic, socioeconomic demographics of those individuals, if that's something you can help us suss out as well.
If you'd like, we had a very in-depth presentation on that.
I'd love to have it one-on-one.
If you'd like a one-on-one, we can
Reason
go
is
through
I need a pitch deck that when I talk to people,
And
you
you
know.
can look at all the Excels and the.
Yeah, okay,
We can
thank
show
you.
you all the data in the background.
But excellent work, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, we have a discussion item on, Chief Hatfield, I'm sorry. I'm sorry? Commissioner Liebman, yes, sir.
Yes, thanks. I just want to make some comments. So very, very good start. I definitely like to set up a meeting. I'd also like a copy of this presentation. This isn't in the backup. And thanks for not recommending black olives on the sidewalks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Chief Hatfield, my apologies.
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, we have a guest tonight with us. I'd like to virtually introduce you to Ryan T. Novak. He's a fourth-year student at the University of Miami, majoring in motion pictures with a minor in advertising. He has a strong passion for both commercial and documentary filmmaking, and Ryan is committed to highlighting the meaningful and untold stories. One of his notable projects here included collaborating with us with the South Miami Police Department to produce a Behind the Badge or Humanizing the Badge recruitment video, which showcases the officers behind the badge and the nobility of policing. So, John, if you don't mind, I would ask you to play that video for us.
Helping people. Helping people is the best thing that I can do. The best gift that God gave me is to be able to help somebody. I have resources to be able to help people.
You gotta have a strong mind and a strong balance. You wanna try to have outlets. Be with family, be with friends. There's a lot of benefits to the training that we get that we can give to people outside in the community.
Joining the police force meant that I got to stay here and make a difference in someone's life. I saved lives and I stopped crime from happening. I have a 1-year-old and a 13-year-old. I take as much vacation as I possibly can with my family.
You have to be mentally strong to help these people out.
Our chief is very pro-training. We have specialized units, and we also have a lot of community activities.
South Miami Police Department's growing, the opportunities are there. We're a really tight community, so we're really close with the citizens of South Miami.
I want these people to know that I'm here for them, not only as a police officer, but as a friend.
All right, Ryan, are you with us virtually?
Yes, I am.
Ryan, good evening.
Any comments from your section or your way out there in Pennsylvania, Ryan?
Thank you very much for having me tonight, and I'm very glad that you guys had the opportunity to see this video. It was an absolute pleasure to work with the South Miami Police Department, and I'm very proud with what we've had the opportunity to create. So I'm excited for more people to see it.
Thank you, Ryan, and appreciation for you. I have a Chiefs Award here. Unfortunately, you couldn't make it in person. School is out, and you're up in Pennsylvania with family and friends. But I'll read it to you. It says, "We hereby honor Ryan Novak, in recognition for your passion, commitment, and community service in humanizing the badge through video, filming, editing, and production for the South Miami Police Department. Signed, Chief Rio Hatfield, June of 2024. We'll get this out to you before too long. So I'll get with you offline, and we'll get your mailing address. And
Ryan, are you back here in the fall?
Yes, I will be back in the middle of August.
Well, why don't we have you back at the beginning of September? We can do it in person if that's okay. Love to make sure we honor you. We appreciate all the time and effort you put into this. Very well done. And I think it's emblematic of the kind of relationship we want to have with the University of Miami and the student body. We know you guys can be a credit to a lot of what we're trying to do here, and I think this is a great example of the ways students and our city can partner together. So thank you for being a shining example of what our partnership could be.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Commissioner Liebman, you're recognized, sir.
And Ryan, a personal promise to you, we won't make you sit through the entire meeting next time.
Yeah, my apologies. I did not realize that you were online for this item. If not, we would have moved it up earlier. So as we did with some
No
other
worries.
items. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a discussion item. If we can introduce M1, please, Madam Clerk.
Yes, noise ordinance modifications, exemption in town center and decibel restriction in single-family residential areas.
Mr. Manager, do you want to introduce this item, or?
I'll just tee it up, and then I'll let the attorney who did some of the background work, working with our Director of Development Services. So we had been looking at some incidents of reports having to do with noise from a single-family neighborhood standpoint, and our difficulty and challenges in trying to address and potentially have something that can be held up from having a standard when we go out to measure potentially noise and deal with it and enforce it. And so as a result of some of those complaints, we've had some internal conversation about it. And I know Director Cabrera has worked with our attorneys a little bit. So the attorney wrote a memo that provides some information. I believe you have it, and I'll let Tony sort of share a little bit of his thoughts on this. Wanted to bring it as a discussion item and potentially make some tweaks that would take us in a different direction as it relates to noise ordinance.
Thank you. So there's two matters that I guess were specifically proposed for discussion. One was the Vice Mayor wanted us to talk about the exempting or limiting the application of the noise restrictions in the town center and the downtown SoMe district, specifically because, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Vice Mayor, but I'll just try to summarize. If we're going to make it a locus of activity and we have noise limitations that conflict with that, we may be creating conflicts that will limit what the activity that we're trying to foster there. The other element of this, and this is something that Ms. Cabrera had raised, she's been working on changing the way we measure the maximum noise limitations, specifically in the single-family district, but it can be, I guess, enlarged to the entire city. And what she's trying to get at is a decibel limitation as opposed to our current standard, which is plainly audible at 100 feet. So that's the language that was proposed here. It's a specific decibel standard. We would have to be able to measure it and train our code enforcement officers to read, to actually take these measurements, and we'd have to specify where they come from. Now,
Can I ask a question about that? Because I think there's an assumption I just want to make sure is correct in this, and that is that it's our code enforcement officers that are going to be responding to these complaints. And in my experience, often it's our police officers that end up being the frontline people on these matters. So
that's an excellent point.
Okay,
that's an excellent point. I think we would need both.
Okay, so
able to be.
I think when we move to this kind of a standard, we will need some sort of, I don't remember the name of the instrument, but we'll need some way to measure that, in fact, people are exceeding these thresholds above ambient noise during these hours. So, do we have a sense of what the cost attendant to this enforcement approach
I
would
don't
be?
believe at this time we have that.
Okay, so I just, again, as we move into the budget, something to think about, and mean, I think this is probably a better standard. The only thing I would say is that our current standard is probably easier to police, no pun intended, because it's, does not require a reading of any kind or any technology. So just something for us to consider as we move forward, but I think it seems to be a very well-calibrated proposal.
Yeah, the one thing we would add, and this is, Ms. Arango and I were looking at the noise ordinance earlier today, and there are a lot of outdated, antiquated provisions. Steam whistles, I don't think we hear too many of those anymore. There's a lot of things like that, so we would recommend if we're gonna if we're gonna pop up the hood on the noise ordinance, we should really clean it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should simplify it to be any noise, whether it's man-made or from any sort of, other technology. I think specifying the technologies dates it very quickly.
Right.
Probably a better way to draft it. I do have a question about the exemption. I don't disagree with the Vice Mayor's suggestion generally, because it is an area that we want to introduce activity, but I was recently had a visit with a woman who served as a nightlife mayor for New York. I didn't know that these positions existed. Her job was to kind of help reconcile a lot of the conflicts between nightlife, bars, restaurants, clubs that obviously have amplified music, or live entertainment, and budding neighborhoods. Probably a good local example where this conflict is evolving more quickly every day is Wynwood, right? Often neighborhoods are kind of made by their kind of nightlife scene or art scene, and then over time, residential gets added, and these conflicts kind of become very pronounced. And so I think my only concern about a blanket exemption is that noise travels, right? And so we may just want to think about a blanket exemption, and also, as we're hoping to see more units come online, one of the things from that conversation, and I'm happy to connect our staff with this individual, and maybe they can help inform what was done elsewhere in New York, is there may be an element here for projects within the town center to maybe incorporate certain kind of noise attenuation aspects, particularly on the residential side, that, often the new residential users will become the complainants about noise, right? And I think we all want to see a more vibrant and robust scene, for lack of a better word, in our town center. When I was knocking on the doors last cycle, people would like to see microbreweries and a wider variety of bars or restaurant venues that they can frequent. I just want to make sure maybe if we can incorporate some requirements or some incentives for people to add, like double pane glass, for example, just a little thicker, right? A little more costlier, but would create a better living environment for people living most adjacent to those uses, right, in the town center. And maybe that buys them an exemption from enforcement of these particular code elements, right?
Yeah, and the place that it comes from, during my discussions with the city manager, I said, look at what happened, how we got where we are. If you look at it, and I'm gonna say it wrong because I can't have that kind of memory. When I was on the planning board, it was literally like, you can't hear it from the sidewalk in front of the restaurant. And I'm like, okay, you just have to walk through downtown right now, and I can tell you anybody who has an open door is already in the wrong. And there was a huge conflict at one point between someone who lived in the apartments at Sunset Place, who bought it knowing what was going on
Correct.
downstairs, and then proceeded to call the police on a daily basis. And I'm sorry, but I think our police
So
department has a lot better to do.
that is
with.
exactly the kind of conflicts that this woman and I discussed,
Mhm.
forgetting her name at the moment. But I think there's also there's a way for us to kind of,
Find
as
a
an
way.
incentive, inoculate the developer, property owner, builder from these kind of complaints if they do certain things to mitigate those future conflicts. So if you're going to have a mixed-use project and you want to activate it with F&B, and hopefully it's a lively scene, but you add double pane glass or triple, I don't know what the standard would be, triple pane glass to kind of provide some noise attenuation in the building, then I think an exemption would be something that I would be very comfortable by, because you're
Yeah, you're giving it-
thinking through those conflicts so that we don't get brought in to provide the enforcement, right? So that might be just something to think about. I think it's,
Yeah.
the,
Well, I don't disagree with you at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
This is literally.
Yeah. Sorry, Commissioner Liebman, my apologies,
I
sir.
don't- Yeah, we don't see you there.
You're recognized, sir. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, so one, sorry, just backing up on, I know you missed me last time, but with the, with placemaking, one thing I wanted to say, which wasn't mentioned, is Sunset Place is gonna change the entire landscape of traffic patterns. It's gonna be the biggest economic driver, the city ever will see. And, I believe ever. So, I would just like for that group to take that into account. But secondly, to provide some further context, the vice mayor alluded to, there were condos, 40-something condos at Sunset Place, and one lady kept complaining when Brother Jimmy's took the former Dan Marino space, and they ended up having to shut down their outdoor bar. And then, in addition to that, in terms of homes as well, specifically between where I live between 58th, 59th Avenue, 80th and 87th, there were 3 homes that were rented to students. Could always tell because 1, there were a lot of cars, 2, they were always in the grass, and 3, they always had northeastern plates. But because of market conditions, there are no more college students renting homes any longer. Homes have just become too expensive in the area. But that was probably one of the number 1 complaints when I first took office.
Yeah,
was the homes in the area rented by college students.
And that's exactly, I think, the source of one of these policy ideas, Commissioner. We have another home a little bit in the middle section of the city, just north of Sunset, where we have that very same conflict. So, further comments or questions, colleagues?
When we're talking about all of these different times, can't we do like a simplified version of this? I mean, if I'm a resident and I'm trying to think, I can have this noise from this time to this time, this time to this time, I can't do this, I can't do that. People generally have, and I mean, call me stupid, and that's okay, but I'm like, okay, you know what? If I'm having a party, I can party until 11:59, but come midnight, I know I have to turn down my music because everybody else is wanting to go to sleep. And that for me is like a common sense thing. I'm not thinking about 8 p.m. or I'm not thinking about those things. And so we not only need to think about how we're putting this together, we need to think about how we're rolling this out. Because if you show up at my house at 8 p.m., for lack of the right word, I'm gonna be like super upset because I'm like, why are you coming to my house? It's 8 o'clock. Like, so we have to think of more than just writing this on the paper. We have to think about how we're gonna tell people this because we suck at that. Sorry, but we do. Like,
Madam
we're
Vice
getting a lot
Mayor,
better.
I agree, and I really don't know whether, Madam Director, if you could address it as well. I don't know if there's a really significant audible difference between 75 decibels and 70,
Or 60.
right, which are what the outer limits would be under all the time proposals here. I don't know if you could help address that, just to get a sense of what that compares to.
So the decibel readings are on a log scale, so the difference between 70 and 75 is significant.
Okay.
It's not just 5, points or something. It's a logarithmic scale, so
Okay.
it is high. And the different time periods, depending on whether it's a weekend or weekday, but we could simplify that. I mean, that's why we're here.
It just doesn't make, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be a jerk to people, but this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I have no idea what 70 decibels sounds like, so if you're sending a postcard to my house, you have to be able to say, hey, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., your like background music in your pool can sound like a lawnmower, but at 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., it has to sound like an electric car. Like, you see what I mean?
And there's actually charts that give you exactly that. OSHA publishes charts that give you exactly that. That tells you, whatever, 60 decibels is whispering, 70 decibels is normal conversation, whatever, 80 is a city street. So, we have, there's charts that we could include for that easily.
And are we, when we're doing this, are we taking into account people are like hanging out in their backyards, people are in their pool, people have music coming out of the speakers in their backyard, like.
So I think maybe a suggestion, I think maybe we should give staff direction to kind of bring an ordinance forward. And as part of that discussion, so we'll have 2 readings, if you can kind of maybe share with us the chart that translates into the level of activity that would trip this kind of a threshold, I think that would probably help address your concern. So,
And what is it
yes.
tripping now? Like, what's the tripping points now?
we don't. It's just plainly audible noise from
100 feet or
100
something.
feet
We're
of the property
changing-
boundary.
The recommendation is also to change where we're measuring from, so that you're actually measuring from the property line of the complainant because sound, could be muffled or whatever in the front of the house, and the people are having a party in the back. So we've had complaints where, in the front of the house, when the police officer gets there, it doesn't really sound very loud, but the house that's on the back or at a diagonal from it, it may sound very loud there. So the idea is you can make as much noise as you want, but once it's above those decibel readings at your neighbor's property line, not yours, then that would trigger a violation.
Other questions? Commissioner Corey?
Should we also add some notes to staff to come back with costs for implementation with that too? Obviously, it wouldn't be part of the ordinance, but just something to consider and ease of enforcement.
So sound meters are not like prohibitively expensive. We had them in other cities that I worked in. We have 2 or 3 sound meters, and I mean, I don't see it as a really expensive item to purchase, and we're only going to need a couple.
So yeah, yes, Commissioner Lieben, you're recognized.
Sorry, in terms of disseminating this information to the public and educating the public about a whisper and so forth, maybe we recommend an app. There's free apps that have decibel meters. I know they can't be used legally, but again, it's just to give people an idea.
Okay. So I think, so what I'm hearing is we want to move forward with this generally, right? If you guys can work on formulating this into an ordinance, and then I think it would be helpful to illustrate what kind of activity would trip the elaborated thresholds for the time suggested. And if we could also understand what the city's strategy would be in terms of procurement of resources, what the right number of resources to procure would be to enforce this, and the cost associated with that. I think it's something we all want to consider. That's what I'm hearing from all of us. Is that correct? Okay. Mr. Manager, is that clear?
I think having something that's more defined, just the cost savings of staff time alone.
I think that's a fantastic.
Involved
I was going to
in-
say, I mean, we currently enforce a sound ordinance. It's like telling somebody you're speeding, but they don't know what the speed limit
No,
is.
and
It's just too fast.
And I
It's
think,
like, what's too
I know
fast?
I've been a party to a lot of conversations. I'd prefer not to be, just in my time. So I can't imagine how much time you spent. And again, we go back to a matter that this group disposed of very early, which is the Students Fit matter, the amount of time and calls
Yep.
associated with that matter. So I think there's, I'm not saying that the costs alone of this aren't justified, because we certainly have other expenditures in terms of staff time and resources, call responses.
Yeah,
But
police
hopefully we would
response.
diminish, right? That would allow us to kind of direct resources elsewhere. So, but I think we just want the information for discussion purposes. Okay?
One last question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The hours that you got, is that a template, or you got that from maybe another municipality, or is it?
Yeah, it's from my experience in 2 other municipalities, but again, we can make it whatever's right for the city.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this. Appreciate it. Okay, do we need formal action, or are we fine with just the direction to bring it back? Okay, we'll rely on the direction, okay? Okay, if we can take up and read item 6, please, for the record.
Item 6, is a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, authorizing the city manager to issue a request for proposal RFP for the development of Hometown District Lot B.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. City Attorney, do you want to quickly review the changes from the last time we reviewed this and summarize the memo for us on any title encumbrances? Thank you for doing that work. I just want to get all that clarified, and then we can have a discussion about how we want to proceed.
Sure thing, Mayor. So there was a red line version that was supplied to you all. It's near the back of whatever packets you have, or the set of electronic documents. So the first clarification was made that it was not limited to a hotel. The first version required a hotel. This expands that, makes a hotel one of the potential uses. So that was the first change. Next change, there were some cleanup items further along. The financial strength and capacity section, that was made consistent with the City Hall RFP to not require so much financial information at the outset, but make very plain that it would be required prior to contract negotiation. So that was added. That was in section 1.77. The evaluation criteria was clarified, that the price proposal included a timing component that had been discussed, and the importance of having of weighting the price proposal based not only on number, but also on when those funds would become available. There was some cleanup regarding the city's rights and to waive irregularities and to reject proposals if none fit the bill. So we added that language in there, and then the next section had to do with the project itself. Okay, again, there's the hotel component, which is a possible component as opposed to a required component. There was a clarification made regarding the site itself. That was based on the title work that y'all had asked us to do. There is a roadway, believe it or not, on the south of the parking lot. It was actually dedicated to the city for roadway purposes, or for highway purposes even.
So dedicated by deed? I'm sorry, not by
Yeah,
plat?
dedicated by deed.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. So that's why you have the current configuration of that parking lot. You know how the road expands at a certain point once as you're moving from east to west? That expansion? Yeah, there's the little alleyway gets bigger as you go deeper into it. You know, the parking lot has like a little jog.
All right.
That's because of how it was deeded, right? So we tried to make clear here that the road is, or the alleyway is sacrosanct, that it has to remain for right-of-way purposes. So that was one clarification. And then we added what is the potential development parameters based on the zoning study. And so where we ended up was 8 stories with bonuses to allow up to 14 stories with a density of 100 dwelling units per acre with no floor area limitation. So that is part of that. In terms of the development vision and goals in section 2.2, we just clarified that the vehicular access way, that dead-end street has to remain open. We also clarified again regarding the upfront revenue payments to try to encourage earlier timing. There were some additional cleanup items regarding the zoning changes, but it's consistent with what I just described. And then it's more additional cleanup. We added a cost recovery element to this, just to make clear what needed to be provided. We don't have an upfront. Do we have an upfront cost recovery? It's
I think it's
blank.
blank.
Yeah, we
It's
left
not-
that blank. So we don't have a number for that. We're leaving that up to you all.
Okay, thank you for the summary. Colleagues, any comments on the draft that you want to kind of bring forward? Yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
I had made mention that since the roadway has to remain, would it be a possibility or would it even be feasible to leave that and build above it so that whoever it is that ends up with this has the benefit of that space just above and beyond whatever is needed, for the truck to get in there or whatever. The city attorney pointed out that it may or may not be possible based on, or maybe it was the city manager, one of the two, like, okay, so where do you have to have columns, or, can you do a cantilever? And so all of those things were discussed, but I just wanted y'all to have the benefit of hearing, is that even a possibility? So that it doesn't just stay dead all the way through.
Thank you for that. Further questions or comments on the draft?
Yeah, well, may I? Oh, sorry.
Of course you can. Commissioner Liebman, you're recognized. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Yes, no worries. It's my item. You've all heard it, but it's on the agenda again. It's been a while. Just want to introduce it quickly. By the way, all the information we were waiting for was an absolute net positive for a potential project. And the street doesn't impact, the street was never going to be included in the parcel that I was suggesting selling. Now, again, the benefit hotel, whatever the project is, people don't eat there. That means they would frequent our restaurants. We need a driver, especially a stopgap between now and Sunset Place. Also, when people are in hotels, they'll tend to frequent the other retailers as well. Of course, for condos, won't be the case with the hotel, but otherwise they're less transient. Again, not the case with the hotel, but condos generate more revenue than an apartment building or straight hotel because of the number of folios. We want to keep saying where we're parked. I know we're doing a parking study, and the parking garage is right across the street. I know that lot generates revenue. I know that the property will be worth more post Sunset Place, but we have to switch hats from private sector to public sector. Public sector, you have to lead. Investors follow government investment. Also, there's a void for hotel. I'll say it definitively, maybe there's one, but in my opinion, we don't have a hotel in the city. And it's in a perfect location. And the bottom line, the whole motivation, the whole catalyst behind this is to generate revenue to support the beginning of the presentation you just heard tonight, which is placemaking. And that's really what we owe to all the investors in our city and all the businesses, both retail and commercial, that help us to keep taxes low and city services rich and account for approximately 2/3 of our tax base. So we need to reinvest in that area. I know we've agreed to do this study, but we don't have the funds for the hardware. So again, that's the ultimate motivation, is that all the revenue from this project stays in the area to go into hardware for placemaking. And otherwise, just find me another revenue source. That's not a bond, because that's not a guarantee. So, but I don't think the votes are there, so.
Let's talk about it, because I don't want to, let's not prejudge it. So, any comments on the draft? I have a bunch on, particularly just around pages, yeah, I know, surprise, surprise, pages 1 and 2 of section 2, right? So I just wanted to, again, so if we're going to do this, I want to be able to evaluate what comes back and then compare apples to apples. And if we want to have an orange variety there that we want to look at as an add-on, I'm fine with that. But I think everything below the graphic, starting with currently, that section of the narrative on page 1 of 6 of section 2, it says what we're contemplating by way of the zoning envelope. I think we need to say that that's the zoning envelope they should provide an initial financial proposal around. And if they want to introduce an alternative, like we did with the RFP for City Hall, let them present an alternative development scenario that might request more density so we can see what we may be leaving on the table. But I think it's going to be hard to evaluate if we have multiple proposals that are all proposing a different program because they're assuming a different zoning envelope. I'm not sure how we're going to compare the economics of one against the other to make sure we're getting the best deal. So that would be my recommendation. Let's follow the model that we did with the City Hall RFP, and let's allow for a base proposal. If they want to go beyond that, certainly we're open to at least considering that alternative. Commissioner Liebman, does that make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. Again, I'm just looking at creating an economic driver and looking to generate revenue to put into placemaking. So absolutely.
I think in terms of moving on to page 2 of the same section, paragraph A, right? I'm fine with the changes. I do have one concern, and that is there's a mandate here to provide a public parking component on the first floor. Again, I don't know the feasibility of that on a lot of this size when we're going to want them to provide probably some off-street loading, right? They probably need to activate the ground floor to require that any portion of the public parking element be on the first floor, I think is going to constrain people's ability to design something that's decent. So I would just rather say there has to be a public parking component, and they should prioritize the placement of parking on the lower floors of the of the garage, right? That's to be built to the site. Makes sense to everyone? Okay.
So pardon me, Mayor, there would be a public parking component, but it would be prioritized?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to mandate this on the first floor, but it should be certainly, if they can incorporate some first floor parking, we would certainly welcome it. But I'm assuming that to get to at least 30 replacement spaces, it's going to require that they utilize more than just the ground floor to accommodate all the other things that have to happen on the site. It's my assumption. Could be wrong. In terms of paragraph B, to me, the last sentence reads like a fire sale. I don't want the market to interpret this as a fire sale. I want to maximize the value. Yeah, the last sentence that's been added here. I want to maximize the value. I think that to me would get the best, the most weight is what provides the greatest net present value in terms of a financial return to the city. So again, that's going to mean, Commissioner Liebman, to your point, we want more money up front, but I don't want to get a slug of money up front and sacrifice the back end of what could be a very lucrative project. So I'd rather model it on a net present value basis and reward, have our staff analyze it and give priority to that. Madam Vice Mayor, you have a comment about that?
Yeah, can you give me an example?
So, we may get a slug of money over time, but, in a prior iteration of a term sheet I circulated, I want to make sure there's a back-end kicker, right? That's not money up front, that's money that, gets, if you're going to do a condo hotel and sell units, I want to make sure that if the market runs up and this is a very attractive product, that we don't just get the money day one, we get money over the life cycle of the sales, right? And so I think the way to analyze that is to say we're going to analyze it on a net present value basis. So what's that mean in terms of dollars? If we got that full stream of revenue day one, and we apply whatever the discount is that Mr. Riverall thinks is appropriate to that stream of payments. Okay. What's not clear to me from this is this proposal is what we want to send by way of a message to potential respondents about how we want them to deal with parking during construction for the surrounding businesses, right? Akashi, Rice, the pizzeria that's there. Some of the other users rely very heavily on this parking. I do not want to sacrifice their tendencies for our ambition to develop a site. So I think we need to require the respondents to address how they're going to park these 30 spaces. Again, I'm less concerned about the revenue. I hate to say that out loud. I'm more concerned about making sure these businesses survive the transition to the day that Commissioner Liebman is envisioning, where there'll be more people to frequent the very businesses that are there. No, I mean, the revenue's important. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, in my proposal, if they had to carry the parking revenue as part of their financials so that didn't have a budgetary hole. I wanted if they're gonna park in our garage, I just didn't want a monthly payment, right? I wanted a contribution towards the CapEx of the garage. I mean, I think I asked for something like $7,000 in the term sheet I put together. We can talk about whether we require some of those elements or not, but at least what I want to see here is at least some emphasis on how are we going to get these surrounding businesses that rely on these parking through the displacement associated with construction, right? And I think we should ask of the respondents to put their best creative hats on and at least try to help us come up with a solution, right? And that's what I have by way of initial comments. I may remember something else as we discuss this further, but anyone else want to add anything to the mix?
I'm good. I don't think I would have thought of that many.
Okay.
But thank you.
Commissioner Corey, Commissioner Kaya, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think we're kind of aware of the risks associated with this. Obviously, we might be running into some parking issues in that area. It's not really a lot that might be able to sustain its own parking. We're developing this in the back of house of what's already been said tonight as the most important development in the history of our city that could conflict with it. So I do think that if this is something we're going to proceed with, that we should proceed with caution. In my, perception of this, don't really see a possibility of this being developed outside of maybe a hotel where we could maintain our parking and really nothing else. Now, I know the market can be creative and they can bring something creative back to us, and I guess I'll just trust the judgment of this board that we would do what was best for the city at that point. But there are some risks associated with this. I just wanted to lay out there so that we're all aware of it. If we do decide to move forward, and of course, I thought those were great points made by the mayor, and I'd love to see them added if that's what we're going to be doing now. So,
I think just my reservation about this process at this moment is exactly the concern about how we may constrain or hurt the development of Sunset Place before we know what they're going to bring forward. You know, my strong suspicion, just given where the market is that if we had a hotel requirement, we probably wouldn't get, we might get responses, but they probably wouldn't be all that economically attractive, given where the financing markets are generally with respect to hotels, hotel uses. My strong suspicion is we'll probably see responses that will have a very strong condo focus, which is what the original proposal that we got was about, because right now, financing is challenging. A lot of folks are moving to condo product because they can finance the construction costs in part with buyer deposits. So, again, I think I'm happy to walk down this path with the board if we want to put it out there and see what comes back. But I still have, I want to reserve the right to not have to award it based on what we see, certainly. So I mean, but I'm happy to move forward and explore the opportunities.
So I'll just state that, I think what we've been kind of going back and forth with is the ability to do something now, kind of put it together to see if we can get something economically that's going to work. My problem is that we always want to, not my problem, I think that what we want to do as a commission in a long-term play is understand the different caveats, the different understanding, the different economic abilities or possibilities that we can do with this particular property. We don't know what Sunset Place is going to look like. We don't know what the requirements are going to be on Sunset Drive, which are the two most important things that we're trying to go do. I mean, I definitely agree with Commissioner Lehman that we have to do something and we need to continue to progress. I just don't think this is the right timing for it. I mean, everything that we've been doing as a commission is more of a legacy play and a really well thought out plan as a legacy play. We want this to be surviving in the next 20 to 50 years. And we don't really know if this particular product is going to work. There's a lot of different caveats on there. So I'm very hesitant to move forward with this particular proposal at this moment, just because of all the different scenarios that could happen here. So currently it's a small lot. It'll have to be tall to be economically feasible. There's a lot of different possibilities at play that we can do with this. Again, we can trade it. We can, we need a park in the area. How do we do that? Do we use this asset particularly as a play? And these are the things that I've said before. So, I'm not inclined to move forward with this particular proposal right now until we get a little bit further along with the current plans that we have. I applaud Commissioner Lehman's to try to understand how we're going to pay for some of these things. I think we're going to be doing everything in our power to make sure we have that budget in place. I just don't know if we need it right now. Those are my comments.
Further thoughts? Yes, Commissioner Lehman, go ahead.
Just some more context. By the way, everyone's comments I thought were great and valuable. Just want to say that there is a parking garage right directly in front, Sunset Place. It's private. As we know, that's the only thing that will stay. And then our parking garage is across the street. And yeah, that's it. I forgot the other thing. But there is still parking there in the interim.
No, I know. I mean, one of the concerns I've heard expressed about this solicitation is from the owner, and for that very reason. They don't want their parking reservoir to become the parking reservoir for these adjoining uses.
Right.
Because they're obviously needed to activate their site. So that is a concern. I mean, I just wanted to throw this other, I'll recognize you in a second, Commissioner Lehman, I see your hand. The other alternative, and I'll beat a dead horse for 1 second, which is, we looked at a very modest 6% growth in our ad valorem base this year. It's about $750,000 of revenue. Does this board want to say we're going to take $250,000 off the table and pledge the revenue from the parking at the site as collateral for a limited borrowing that could net us, $3.5 to $5 million, depending on what Mr. Riverall tells me, to actually do improvements to Sunset Place? I mean, that is Sunset Drive, excuse me. That is an approach that I think meets the mark for Commissioner Lehman in terms of finding revenue to do improvements, and does not necessarily encumber the asset with another use for the long term, right? It's kind of a medium term or interim term, I think, alternative. That to me would be the most comfortable option, but I know it requires 5 out of 5 votes today to get that done. So, I mean, I throw it out there because I think it's a way to kind of also meet the goal of saying we got cash in hand to do something, but it's going to require us to have the budget discipline to say we're going to set aside that 250 for this purpose. Mr. Rural, I mean, are my numbers roughly in the range of reasonable? So $3.5 million possibly on the 250, less? Again, correct me, I don't know, no shame if you want to throw what you think. Okay, $2.5 million, so just for the record, okay? So how do we want to proceed? Yes, Commissioner Lieben, you're recognized.
So, yeah, just a little more context. The other 2 properties, the adjoining properties are in play. So, right, that could be a contributing factor, just something for us to consider. And then, yes, the proprietor, I don't want to speak for anyone, but the proprietor of Sunset Place is in favor of a hotel on that site. But okay, yeah, we can vote. And then at $2.5 million, is it gonna, it's better than nothing, and I'd support that. But you know, it's not gonna get us very far in terms of the money we're gonna need for placemaking. But it's something.
Well, I mean, look, the last proposal we had was initially the hard number was $5 million. So, I mean, again, how do we want to proceed? I'm fine supporting a solicitation with the modifications. Again, I'm going to reserve the right not to award the development because I want to understand what the conflicts are and I want to understand what the proposal looks like. But I'm happy to have the conversation and see what comes back in the market, whether there's real interest. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
I think we had Commissioner Lieben with another comment, and I'll recognize you, sir.
No, I was just gonna ask you, Mayor, to make that motion so we could adopt those amendments and then we could just vote it and whatever. But then, sorry.
I think it's your item. If you want to move it with my modifications, I think that would be the best way to proceed.
Well, post Commissioner Kaya's comments, I'd like to move the item with the mayor's proposed amendments.
Okay, Commissioner Kaya, comments?
Do we think it's fair for any of the proposals to start working on this and invest time and do this? I mean, obviously it's on their own time and they understand, they're going to read and understand what we're doing and what our thought process is by this conversation. Do we just think it's a waste of time a little bit right now? I mean, I don't want to play this game where we do proposals out there and there's, you know, a 50-50 shot or a 30% shot that we're actually going to go move forward with it. Without a lot of unknowns. I mean, with a lot of unknowns. So, look, if you...
Speaking for myself, what I'll say is I mean, I had some, there was one respondent that I had some questions about. I mean, I'm very sensitive to people spending time and money on these processes. It's not without significant financial consequence. But that said, you know, saying no today precludes someone from bringing something forward that may knock my socks off. Maybe there's something that's really spectacular, and I could find a way to support. But again, for me, it's a high bar to kind of do something on the site today. So as long as people understand that, whoever may be watching or may watch this in the future, certainly I'm going to expect something to be pretty significant for me to want to cast my vote in support of it. Yep. So we have any further comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion for, against, whatever we want to do. Commissioner Lieben?
I think he did it.
He made a motion.
You want,
Yeah,
so
he
you have,
made the
you want to reaffirm the motion to approve with the modifications I suggested? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
the motion, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion by Commissioner Lieben, a second by the Vice Mayor. Any last discussion for the good of the order? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Oh, I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we need to fill in that amount?
We do need a cost recovery number. Thank you for highlighting that, Madam Clerk. Any thoughts from any board members on a cost recovery amount? Should we ask for $15,000? And I'm going based on what we've expended thus far in your summary on just City Hall. Is that, I mean, I don't know if that's a fair gauge from my perspective.
Yeah, I think that's, what do you think?
I mean, I'm hoping we'll have more than one proposal, so if it's
Yeah.
two, we'll have $30,000 to cover our time at least in hand when they submit, as opposed to?
Correct.
Okay. So I would propose that we make that yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and.
You guys
yeah.
good?
Yes, with no proposal bond, right? Same as City Hall? No proposal bond.
I'm not sure what that means. You want to
There
translate
was a
that for me?
proposal bond, with City Hall, we had discussed it, that, basically it sets, the proposer is committing that they're going to honor the bid. You had waived it with City Hall. Do you want to waive it here as well?
Honor the
A
bid.
guarantee of the bid,
A guarantee of the bid.
yeah.
I don't understand.
That they're not going to withdraw their bid in the middle of the process, that we're not going to go through the process.
And then stay with nothing.
Right.
What did they put up an amount?
Yeah, they would put up
or
an amount.
That they don't,
Yeah, it's like a deposit amount, basically.
non-refundable?
Yes.
What was that deposit for City Hall?
It was
It
deleted.
was deleted in City Hall.
Oh.
We eliminated it.
So I'm sorry, so we would be bonding what, their economic proposal or the amount for cost recovery?
The economic proposal. It's a
Okay,
separate,
so
it's a
if
separate issue from
someone,
cost recovery.
if someone said, we're going to pay you $3 million, and we said yes, they'd have to bond for the $3 million?
No, this was an amount. I think with City Hall, we had provided for, I think like $50,000 or something like that. Basically a penalty if they pull out at the, 11th
As
hour.
long as, they're covering your costs, our costs for third-party reviews, my preference is not to do that, but, I mean, I don't know what the board's preference is.
I think that's how we ended up
Yeah.
there with City Hall.
So does that warrant a larger amount or a smaller amount? What's the suggestion from staff? Because I'm assuming the cost recovery contribution is non-refundable, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
That-
so-
So this the cost recovery element that we were discussing
Yeah.
is for for the period of time up to now, when bids are submitted,
When-
up to the point of selection.
Correct.
At selection, there's a second cost recovery amount for the process of negotiation.
Correct.
And nailing down. So what we're really talking about is that first period.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I think we had discussed $15,000 or $20,000, I think is.
Okay.
Why don't we just do 10 since it's a smaller project?
That's fine, it's the pleasure of the board.
You okay with that?
It's fine. Anybody have an objection to $10,000? Okay, so we'll require $10,000 as the cost recovery amount, okay?
Mhm.
Okay, with those modifications, again, Commissioner Lieben, you're the maker of the motion. Do you accept that modification?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Vice Mayor, I'm assuming you're fine with that?
Yes.
Okay, so, Madam Clerk, if you want to call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaye,
No.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bonich,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Item passes 4-1.
Okay, so if you can read number 7, please.
Yes, item 7, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, approving an amendment to the city's American Rescue Plan at ARPA funding plan to authorize the city manager to, 1, modify funding amounts for previously approved ARPA projects, services, and other eligible expenses, and 2, modify the list of ARPA project services and other eligible expenses to be funded, which such authorization to be exercised only if time becomes a factor for use of ARPA funds.
Mr. Manager, your item.
Thank you, Mayor. This item, basically, in essence, there are no transfers of any funds for any projects. It's basically providing further flexibility for myself to be able to deal with the requirements imposed by the federal government on ARPA funds. First one being that we have to encumber funds by December of this year, and the second being that we have to expend all our funds by December of '26. So what this would do is allow the flexibility as we monitor the progress of projects that have been previously awarded money by resolution and their critical path potentially. And these are more primarily the projects that have permit process to them. And we meet on a regular basis and we're monitoring their progress. There could come a time where we may feel that we're not going to be able to encumber the funds given the status of the project, and we would just replace it with another project that has been approved and switch funds from that standpoint. So in essence, if a project is awarded, we'll just say $1 million of ARPA money, and we feel we're not going to make it the encumbrance and/or the expenditure, we could replace it with another project. And so, for clarification purposes, once we do that, we're not making $1 million available, and that's just going to be replaced by another project that we have in our capital project list. So, in essence, this is just giving me that flexibility to be able to manage that. So we're a little bit more nimble and flexible as it relates to meeting these timelines that we're going to be facing. Just clarification on, and we shared some ideas that we've been tracking potentially on, possible projects that could be brought into and replace a project in ARPA. And you see a list as, garbage truck. Well, that's something that we're discussing on our capital projects now for the fiscal year we're working on, next fiscal year. There's South Miami Park restroom and concession. That does not mean that the project needs an additional 1.1. It just means that 1.1 right now is funded through CIP General Fund. And so anyhow, again, this is not changing any of their projects. We're not making any changes to the allocations. This is just changing the ability for the administration to make these changes to meet the federal requirements on a timely basis, and certainly can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions of the manager? Okay. Commissioner Liebman, you're good? Is there a motion on the item? Are you okay? Wow, not good.
I'll move the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kaya, a second by Commissioner Corey. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
That's Commissioner Kaya,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Liebman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bornish,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Item passes 5-0.
Before we stand adjourned, just want to say go Panthers, and seeing no further business before the council, this meeting's adjourned. Have a good evening.
4-2.